Chapter 2194. On the mountainside of the snow-capped peak, a loud and clear voice rang out, with a hint of excitement in it. Nangong Chen Nangong Yi, both of you have heard about Duan Lingtian, right? A young man with a slightly sturdy body flew over from the distance, and arrived in front of the other two young men, in just a blink of an eye. The other two young men looked exactly the same. It was obvious that they were twins. After the sturdy young man finished speaking, he did not wait for the twins to speak before he continued to say, "Let me tell you, that's my junior brother Ling Tian." The more the sturdy young man spoke, the more excited he became. It was as though he was afraid others would not know he knew Duan Lingtian. This sturdy young man was none other than Gu Li, who had come to the upper province of the Dao Martial Saint Land with Duan Lingtian. Not only did Gu Li come to the upper province with Duan Lingtian, but they had even joined the sect of Zoroastrianism. However, due to the inheritance of the Kratos progeny, the third absolute of the seven absolutes sect, he left the sect of Zoroastrianism. He was so lucky to have become the successor of the Kratos progeny, the third absolute of the seven absolutes sect. Initially, I thought I'd be stronger than junior brother Ling Tian, since I managed to obtain the inheritance from the Kratos progeny, the third absolute of the seven absolutes sect, and my fate was changed by the six absolutes heaven-defying fate-changing grand formation. I didn't expect him to surpass me again. Gu Li thought to himself when he heard the news about Duan Lingtian becoming a guardian of Zoroastrianism, ranking 18th on the Supreme Saint ranking, and being widely acknowledged as the #1 prodigy in the Dao Martial Saint Land. Naturally, he was happy for Duan Lingtian as well. He even went to look for the Nangong brothers, the successors of the seven absolute sect's Didymus progeny, and told them he knew Duan Lingtian. There was a hint of flaunting in his words. He was bragging that he knew Duan Lingtian, the guardian of Zoroastrianism, who was widely acknowledged as the #1 prodigy in the Dao Martial Saint Land. You know Duan Lingtian too? However, Gu Li would never have dreamt that his boastful words would receive such a response. You know Duan Lingtian too? Nangong Yi's words echoed in Gu Li's ears, causing Gu Li to be dumbfounded. You don't know junior brother Ling Tian, do you? Gu Li looked at Nangong Yi and then at Nangong Chen. He was dumbfounded. How could there be such a coincidence in this world? Of course, Nangong Yi replied immediately. Both of us have known Duan Lingtian since we were on the mortal continent in the Debussy subterranean. We even know all of his friends and family. However, I don't think I've ever heard him mention you, Gu Li. Nangong Yi looked at Gu Li skeptically before he asked solemnly. Gu Li, don't tell me you're bragging? I've never heard Duan Lingtian mention you before. Gu Li was stunned when he heard Nangong Yi's words. He was so angry that his face turned red. Nangong Yi said he was bragging? Bragging. Just as Gu Li was about to say something with a flushed face, Nangong Chen finally opened his mouth and said, as if his words were as precious as gold. Gu Li was so angry that he almost threw up blood. I'm the successor of the Kratos progeny, the third absolute of the seven absolutes sect. Is there a need for me to brag? Gu Li asked with a red face. That's not necessarily true. Nangong Yi shook his head and continued to look at Gu Li skeptically. It was as though he was certain Gu Li was bragging. Nangong Chen nodded as well. Suddenly, Gu Li felt as if he had lifted a rock and smashed it on his own feet. At the same time, he tried to explain himself. He wanted to prove that he was not bragging. After Gu Li had spoken for a long time. All right, I'll stop teasing you. Nangong Yi interrupted Gu Li and laughed heartily. In the end, it seemed as though he was about to cry. It was obvious that he had been holding back his laughter for a long time. Upon seeing this, Gu Li was confused. He did not know what Nangong Yi meant. Gu Li, although we haven't met before, I've heard about you. I know you're from the lower province's mystical sky mansion, and you're Duan Lingtian's senior brother. Moreover, you've spent some time in the Azure Cloud Mansion's Azure Cloud platform. Nangong Yi said with a smile. However, not long after we arrived at the Azure Cloud Mansion, you left the lower province with Duan Lingtian and came to the upper province. For this reason, we haven't had the chance to meet. Previously, after Duan Lingtian had brought them to the Azure Cloud Mansion from Windfall Nation, They had left the Azure Cloud Mansion and came to the upper province of the Dao Marshal Saint Land. So all of you are the family and friends that junior brother Ling Tian brought to the Azure Cloud Mansion from afar before he left the upper province. I only heard from junior brother Ling Tian that he brought a group of family and friends to the Azure Cloud Mansion. But I didn't know all of you were among them. Upon hearing Nangong Yi's words, realization dawned on Guli. At the same time, he glared at Nangong Yi. Then why did you say you've never heard of me? Are you kidding me? I'm just kidding, just kidding. Nangong Yi smiled. Nangong Chen, it's fine if your brother is just kidding, but I really can't tell that even someone as serious as you is so shameless. Guli glared at Nangong Chen. You're too stupid. Nangong Chen continued to be a man of few words. However, when these 3 words entered Guli's ears, it caused blood to rush to Guli's head. He said angrily, Nangong Chen, are you trying to pick a fight? Are you trying to fight me, Guli? If you want to fight, let's fight. Nangong Chen refused to back down. Coincidentally, our Didymus progeny wants to change positions as well. We'll replace your Kratos progeny and become the new 3 absolutes of the 7 absolutes sect. It was rare for Nangong Chen to speak so much. However, these words rendered Guli speechless. Nangong Chen, can you be a little more shameless? I want to fight you one-on-one. Do you understand? What does this have to do with your Didymus progeny? Guli, naturally, understood the meaning behind Nangong Chen's words. Nangong Chen intended to fight him together with Nangong Yi. Both Nangong Chen and Nangong Yi were no match for him in a one-on-one battle. However, if both of them attacked him together, he knew he was no match for them. I think it's a good idea. I also think the 3 absolutes sounds better than the 6 absolutes. Nangong Yi, who was standing at the side, also nodded solemnly. Shameless, Guli cursed and left in a huff. Perhaps, he might be able to fight Nangong Chen and Nangong Yi in the future. However, for now he was still lacking. Regarding this, he was well aware of his own limits. If he lost the 3 absolutes in a fit of anger, not only would the ancestors of the Kratos progeny, who were already buried in the ground, be angered to death, but those who had ascended to the Devata realms would also be angered to death. After Guli left, Nangong Chen and Nangong Yi looked at each other and could not help but laugh. A hint of yearning could be seen in Nangong Yi's eyes. After hearing about the Duan Lingtian's deeds, I also want to leave the northern region and make a name for myself with my current strength. I didn't think half a year was long before, but now, I feel like it's too long. I don't know why Senior Uncle Prophet said that we can only leave after half a year. He said that he wanted us to consolidate our cultivation and cultivate our minds. But why do I feel that he purposely picked an auspicious date for us? When Nangong Yi reached the end of his sentence, he could not help but complain. What an old faker. Why do I feel cold all of a sudden? In the next moment, Nangong Yi felt as though the air around him had suddenly turned cold. It was as though he had fallen into an ice cave. He was stunned. Although he was in the middle of a snowy peak, the cold was nothing to him. However, the coldness he felt now did not seem to be the coldness of ordinary weather. He raised his head to look at Nangong Chen to see if Nangong Chen felt the same. However, he noticed that Nangong Chen was trying to signal him with his eyes while looking behind him. He seemed a little flustered. At that moment, he subconsciously turned around to look as well. With just a glance, he saw the graceful and beautiful figure in the distance, and his pupils couldn't help but shrink. A woman dressed in a snow-white robe stood in the air nearby. She looked like a celestial maiden who had descended from the heavens. She, who had an outstanding temperament, caused everything around her to seem to be overshadowed, and at the same time, she also made people feel ashamed of their inferiority. The woman had long hair that reached her waist, that fell to her back, like a waterfall from the 9 heavens. Although her face was covered by a white veil, her face was flawless. But looking at the other half of her face that was flawless, as if it had been carefully sculpted, it was not hard to imagine that under the white veil, there must be a peerless beauty. She stood there and did not deliberately move, but she was like an ice goddess. She invisibly emitted waves of cold aura, causing the temperature of the surrounding air to drop a few degrees. I hope there won't be a next time. A moment later, the white-clothed woman spoke. A very pleasant voice came from under the veil on her face, but it also gave off an ethereal and cold feeling. As soon as she finished speaking, the woman in white drifted away. As soon as she left, the temperature in the surroundings returned to normal. At this moment, the Nangong brothers finally heaved a sigh of relief. It's said that the successor of the prophet progeny, the second absolute of the seven absolute sect, is not good at fighting. Why do I have a feeling that the tradition of the prophet progeny is going to be broken in this generation? Nangongyi asked through voice transmission as he looked at Nangong Chen. She's very strong. She's not any weaker than the successor of the blazing phoenix progeny. Nangong Chen replied through voice transmission. His tone was solemn. The feeling she gives me is even more dangerous than the successor of the blazing phoenix progeny. Perhaps it's because the successor of the blazing phoenix progeny is an old friend. Chapter 2195. A group of uninvited guests from the east had arrived in the western region today. After the group of uninvited guests entered the western region, they headed in the same direction without looking back. That direction was where the Zoroastrianism base was located. There were 6 people in the group. Among them, the person leading the group was a very old man. It was as if he had one foot in the coffin. The old man was dressed in a spacious gray robe. He had white hair, white eyebrows and a white beard. The reason he looked like he had one foot in the coffin was because he looked too old. The skin on his face, hands, and other parts of his skin that were exposed were not only full of wrinkles, but there were also many dark spots. If he was an ordinary old man, he would be nearing the end of his lifespan. However, it was precisely this extremely aged old man, who seemed to have half a foot in his coffin, that flew like a ghost. In fact, other than the red-clothed woman and the white-robed young man, who were following closely behind him, the remaining 3 people were being carried by him as he flew. Moreover, with 3 people in tow, his speed was still very fast. It was ridiculously fast. The group of 7 entered the western region at an exaggerated speed and headed toward the Zoroastrianism base. It did not take long for them to arrive at the Zoroastrianism base. When they arrived at the Zoroastrianism base, the group of people led by the old man stopped in their tracks. Zoroastrianism. Looking at the Zoroastrianism base in front of him, a cold light flashed in the old man's eyes. Then the old man said in a clear voice, Lang Qianjin of Zhuangzi Buddhism, together with the sect leader of Zhuangzi Buddhism, the Purple Dragon King, the White Tiger King, and the 2 vice sect leaders, are here to visit the guardian of Zoroastrianism, Duan Lingtian. Although the old man's voice was not loud, it seemed to contain magic. Once it was heard, it swept through the entire Zoroastrianism base. Whether it was the people from the 4 symbols sanctums, or the inner circle of Zoroastrianism, everyone heard his voice and heard what he said clearly. Lang Qianjin? This name sounds familiar. Inside the Vermilion Bird Sanctum, one of the Vermilion Bird Sanctum's elders frowned. He felt like he had heard this name somewhere before, but he could not recall where. Is there a need for it to sound familiar? This person said that he came with the leader of Zhuangzi Buddhism, the Purple Dragon King, and the White Tiger King. This means that his position in Zhuangzi Buddhism is higher than these 3. And in Zhuangzi Buddhism, there is only one person who has a higher position than these 3. As the other Vermilion Bird Sanctum's elder spoke, a hint of dread flashed in his eyes. I didn't expect him to come personally. He must have brought people to Zoroastrianism to avenge one of the 4 Shakyamuni of Zhuangzi Buddhism, the Golden Lion King Xiekong Sun. This time, I'm afraid that Guardian Ling Tian is doomed. His voice began to tremble as he spoke. You're saying he's the supreme elder of Zhuangzi Buddhism? The Vermilion Bird Sanctum's elder narrowed his eyes in shock. After this reminder, he remembered something else. I remember now. Isn't Lang Qianjin the name of the powerhouse who's ranked 2nd on the Supreme Saint ranking? He's the supreme elder of Zhuangzi Buddhism. The Vermilion Bird Sanctum's elder's expression changed drastically when he recalled this. My goodness. He actually came personally. Moreover, the Purple Dragon King, the White Tiger King, and the sect leader of Zhuangzi Buddhism are with him. A powerhouse at the 9th form of the Saint Celestial stage. 2 powerhouses at the 8th form of the Saint Celestial stage, and 1 powerhouse at the 7th form of the Saint Celestial stage. This lineup is the strongest lineup in Zhuangzi Buddhism, right? Originally, Zhuangzi Buddhism had 2 powerhouses at the 7th form of the Saint Celestial stage. They were the Golden Lion King and the Green Bat King, who were one of the 4 Shakyamuni of Zhuangzi Buddhism, along with the Purple Dragon King and the White Tiger King. However, the Green Bat King died 3 years ago. As for the Golden Lion King, he was killed by Guardian Ling Tian not long ago. This time, all the powerhouses at the 7th form of the Saint Celestial stage, or above from Zhuangzi Buddhism, have come with ill intentions. With such a powerful lineup, even Lord Sect Leader might not be able to protect Guardian Ling Tian, right? At this moment, apart from the Vermilion Bird Sanctum, even the other 3 sanctums of the 4 symbols sanctums, and the Saint Land of Zoroastrianism, were shocked by the arrival of Lang Qianjin, the Supreme Elder of Zhuangzi Buddhism. Lang Qianjin was not just the Supreme Elder of Zhuangzi Buddhism. He was widely acknowledged as the 2nd strongest person in the Tao Martial Saint Land, second only to Nie Wu Tian, the strongest person in the Tao Martial Saint Land. It was obvious such a person had come to Zoroastrianism to denounce them. Many of the ordinary Zoroastrianism elders and disciples were anxious. Lord Sect Leader and Lord Guardians won't fight with the powerhouses from Zhuangzi Buddhism, right? With their strength, it won't be a joke if they fight. Not only will our Zoroastrianism be affected, but will also be affected. That's right. The battle between powerhouses at that level will be earth-shattering. Even if we're far away, I'm afraid we'll be affected as well. Now we can only hope they won't fight. Unless our Zoroastrianism is willing to hand over Guardian Ling Tian, it's very likely they'll fight. Since Lang Qianjin, the Supreme Elder of Zhuangzi Buddhism, has personally come, it's enough to show how determined the people from Zhuangzi Buddhism are. Guardian Ling Tian killed the Golden Lion King, one of the 4 great Karmapa of Zhuangzi Buddhism, and the Golden Lion King is a pillar in Zhuangzi Buddhism. It's fine if Guardian Ling Tian didn't return to our Zoroastrianism, but now that he's back, the Zhuangzi Buddhism definitely won't let this matter go. When the people from Zhuangzi Buddhism arrived, before they could even enter the Zoroastrianism's base, the Supreme Elder of Zhuangzi Buddhism, Lang Qianjin's words caused an earth-shattering earthquake in the Zoroastrianism. From this, one could see how powerful Lang Qianjin, the Supreme Elder of Zhuangzi Buddhism, was. Visit me? When Lang Qianjin, the Supreme Elder of Zhuangzi Buddhism, spoke to the entire Zoroastrianism, Duan Lingtian naturally heard it as well. Duan Lingtian narrowed his eyes, and a cold light flashed in his eyes. Guardian Ling Tian, the sect leader has asked me to summon you. After a while, Duan Ling Tian heard a woman's voice from outside. He was no stranger to this voice. It was none other than the only female guardian among the 5 great guardians of Zoroastrianism, Guardian Hong Yun. Guardian Hong Yun. As soon as Hong Yun finished speaking, Duan Ling Tian had already flown out of his cultivation place. It was also his residence as a true disciple in the past. Now, although the place where he would cultivate as a protector was under construction, it had yet to be completed. It was easy to set up an island in the sky, but it would take some time to build a mansion on it even with the help of the Saint Land's elite disciples. Guardian Ling Tian, the people from Zhuangzi Buddhism have come with ill intentions. I'm afraid this matter will be a little tricky. Guardian Hong Yun sighed when she saw Duan Lingtian coming out. I can see that. Duan Lingtian nodded. How could he not see that? Even the Supreme Elder of the Zhuangzi Buddhism, Lang Qianjin, who was ranked 2nd on the Supreme Saint ranking, was here. How could this matter not be tricky? Don't worry. Lord Sect Leader has broken through to the 9th form of the Saint Celestial stage, the Celestial Ascension form. He might not be afraid of Lang Qianjin from Zhuangzi Buddhism. Guardian Hong Yin comforted Duan Lingtian. Duan Lingtian nodded again, before he soared into the sky with Hong Yin, to look for the sect leader of Zoroastrianism. When Duan Lingtian arrived, he discovered Tang Xian, the sect leader of Zoroastrianism, was not the only one present. Even the other 3 guardians of Zoroastrianism were present. They were Zifeng, Qinghua, and Leng Ying. Sect leader. Duan Lingtian nodded and greeted Tang Xian. Then, he glanced at Zifeng and the other two guardians, and nodded politely as a form of greeting. They were already used to Duan Lingtian's casual attitude, so they did not show any emotions. Moreover, given the current situation of Zoroastrianism, they could not be bothered with formalities. Guardian Lingtian, Tang Xian, the sect leader of Zoroastrianism, looked at Duan Lingtian and said bluntly, "The four guardians and I plan to meet the people from Zhuangzi Buddhism. I wonder if you're coming with us. I respect your decision. Since they've come knocking on my door, how can I run away?" Duan Lingtian said with a shrug. Upon hearing Duan Lingtian's words, Zifeng, Qinghua, and Hongyan looked at him with admiration in their eyes. Even Leng Ying, who had a grudge with Duan Lingtian, looked at Duan Lingtian with a gentler gaze. Duan Lingtian's choice caused them to admire him. "If that's the case, let's meet them." Tang Xian's eyes gleamed coldly when he heard Duan Lingtian's reply. He took the lead and flew toward the people from Zhuangzi Buddhism. If he did not handle this matter well, not only would he, the sect leader of Zoroastrianism, but the entire Zoroastrianism would be humiliated as well. "Let's go." When Duan Lingtian and the others saw Tang Xian taking the lead, they naturally followed closely behind him. While Duan Lingtian and the others were preparing to meet the people from Zhuangzi Buddhism, there were a few people in Zoroastrianism who were eager to see the world plunged into chaos. "I hope the people from Zhuangzi Buddhism will be tougher. It'll be even better if Lang Qianjin, the supreme elder of Zhuangzi Buddhism, personally kills Duan Lingtian. This is great news. Since Lang Qianjin, the supreme elder of Zhuangzi Buddhism, has personally made a move, I'm sure he won't give up until he achieves his goal. Guardian Lingtian? He's going to be a dead guardian soon." Dai Duan Lingtian, Wu Hong and Wen Yan, the two direct disciples of the Sanctum leader of Azure Dragon Sanctum, were among those who were eager to see the world plunged into chaos. Chapter 2196. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Duan Lingtian and the other four Zoroastrianism guardians walked side by side. They followed closely behind Tang Xian, the sect leader of the Zoroastrianism sect, as they made their way out of the Zoroastrianism sect's encampment. Soon after, they left the Zoroastrianism sect's encampment. At the same time, a few figures appeared in the distant void within his line of sight. As they approached, the figures that were originally like small black dots began to grow larger and larger. In the end, they turned into a group of 6 people. The person in the lead was an old man dressed in gray. He looked very old, as though he had one foot in his coffin. "He's Lang Qianjin, the supreme elder of the Zhuangzi Buddhism sect?" Duan Lingtian thought in his heart as he guessed the old man's identity. While Duan Lingtian was observing Lang Qianjin's eyes, which seemed to be able to see through everything, landed on Duan Lingtian after he glanced at the others. He felt as though he had nowhere to hide. "You're Duan Lingtian?" At the same time, a voice rang in Duan Lingtian's ears. Although the voice sounded old, it was strong and powerful. This voice was similar to the one that had spread throughout the Zoroastrianism sect. It was none other than Lang Qianjin, the supreme elder of the Zhuangzi Buddhism sect. Voice transmission. "Lang Qianjin." Duan Lingtian replied through voice transmission when he heard Lang Qianjin's question. "Humph." As soon as Duan Lingtian asked the question, Lang Qianjin's cold snort rang in Duan Lingtian's ears like a clap of thunder. "Duan Lingtian, how dare you kill the Golden Lion King of the Zhuangzi Buddhism sect?" A hint of anger could be heard in Lang Qianjin's voice, as though he was trying to intimidate Duan Lingtian. However, was Duan Lingtian someone he could intimidate just because he wanted to? "No matter how courageous I am, I'm not as shameless as you, Lang Qianjin. You snatched my super saint weapons, and you still have the audacity to shout in my ears?" Duan Lingtian replied through voice transmission, not to be outdone. His tone was filled with a hint of mockery. Duan Lingtian remembered when he had left the pseudo-realm, the devil sect, the supreme elder of the Zhuangzi Buddhism sect. The supreme elder of the Zhuangzi Buddhism sect had announced the supreme elder of the Zhuangzi Buddhism, The supreme elder of the Zhuangzi Buddhism, declared the Buddhism, by Duan ancient. When Duan Lingtian first heard this, he did not know whether to laugh or cry. Put aside the fact that he did not possess the two super saint weapons, he had not even met the supreme elder of the Zhuangzi Buddhism sect. How could he have snatched the super saint weapons away? You. Upon hearing Duan Lingtian's voice transmission, Lang Qianjin's old face turned pale. His gaze was as sharp as a blade as he looked at Duan Lingtian. If looks could kill, Duan Lingtian would have died many times over. Lang Qianjin had made the announcement to create a false impression that Duan Lingtian's super saint weapons were in his hands. Naturally, he had done this to distract people from looking at Duan Lingtian's super saint weapons. This way, he would have a greater chance of snatching the super saint weapons away from Duan Lingtian. Duan Lingtian's words were, without a doubt, meant to mock him. Previously, this matter had caused him to be mocked by many people in the upper province of the Dao Martial Saint Land. They mocked him for making a false announcement to deceive people, even though he was a powerhouse at the 9th form of the Saint Celestial stage. How despicable! Now that Duan Lingtian had mentioned this matter, it was no doubt he was rubbing salt in the wound. He was infuriated. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Meanwhile, Duan Lingtian and the other 4 guardians of Zoroastrianism had followed the sect leader of Zoroastrianism to where Zhuangzi Buddhism and the others were. Elder Lang, it's an honor for the Zoroastrianism to come all the way here. Tang Xian, the sect leader of Zoroastrianism, greeted Lang Qianjin, the supreme elder of the Zhuangzi Buddhism, with a smile on his face. Humph! Lang Qianjin snorted coldly in response to Tang Xian's greeting. He said bluntly, Sect leader Tang, I'm sure you can guess the purpose of our visit. Today, we're here to kill the person who killed the Golden Lion King of the Zhuangzi Buddhism. For this reason, I hope you'll hand him over, Sect leader Tang. Lang Qianjin said bluntly. His tone was slightly impatient. As soon as he finished speaking, he shifted his gaze from Tang Xian to Duan Lingtian. His gaze was as sharp as a knife. Tang Xian and the 4 guardians of the fire worship sect frowned when they heard Duan Lingtian's words. Was the supreme elder of the Zhuangzi Buddhism not a little too impatient? Tang Xian in particular had met the supreme elder of the Zhuangzi Buddhism before. However, he had never seen such an impatient side of him. Duan Lingtian was the only one who was not surprised by Lang Qianjin's reaction. This was because Lang Qianjin was so impatient, because he was angered by Duan Lingtian. It was as though he wanted to kill Duan Lingtian, to avenge the Golden Lion King of the Zhuangzi Buddhism. While Tang Xian and the others were frowning, Duan Lingtian shifted his gaze from Lang Qianjin, the supreme elder of the Zhuangzi Buddhism, to the people behind him. More accurately, his gaze landed on 3 of them. This purple-clad woman must be the leader of the 4 great Karmapa of the Zhuangzi Buddhism, the Violet Dragon King. Duan Lingtian looked at the only woman in the group behind Lang Qianjin. She was also the most eye-catching person in the group behind Lang Qianjin. The woman was dressed in purple, and half of her face was covered by a purple veil. However, through the other half of her beautiful face, one could imagine that the other half of her face behind the veil was also very beautiful. The Violet Dragon King is a powerhouse at the 8th form of the Saint Celestial stage. She was previously ranked 10th on the Supreme Saint ranking. 3 years ago, the Sectless Cultivator who was ranked 9th on the Supreme Saint ranking died in the pseudo-realm left behind by the 3 eminent Devil Celestials. She's now ranked 9th on the Supreme Saint ranking. The information about the Violet Dragon King on the Supreme Saint ranking appeared in Duan Lingtian's mind. This white-clad young man must be the last remaining Karmapa of the Zhuangzi Buddhism, the White Tiger King. He's also a powerhouse at the 8th form of the Saint Celestial stage, and is ranked 11th on the Supreme Saint ranking. Duan Lingtian shifted his gaze from the Violet Dragon King to the white-clad young man who was standing near her. The white-robed young man was tall and sturdy. He looked very powerful. He stood there like a giant tower made of iron. There were 3 people standing behind Lang Qianjin, the supreme elder of the Zhuangzi Buddhism. The other 2 people were standing behind him. For this reason, it was not difficult for Duan Lingtian to identify the three people in front of him based on their attire. As for the skinny black-clad old man, he must be the sect leader of the Zhuangzi Buddhism, a powerhouse at the seventh form of the Saint Celestial stage. Duan Lingtian finally shifted his attention to the sect leader of the Zhuangzi Buddhism. It was not that Duan Lingtian was looking down on him. It was just that compared to the supreme elder of the Zhuangzi Buddhism and the two Karmapa, the sect leader of the Zhuangzi Buddhism was insignificant. After all, he was not as strong as the three people in front of him. Elder Lang, Tang Xian, the sect leader of the Zoroastrianism, narrowed his eyes when he saw Lang Qianjin, the supreme elder of the Zhuangzi Buddhism, going straight to the point. He said coldly, "Since you're so direct, I won't beat around the bush. You want me to hand Ling Tian over to you? Impossible. Impossible." Tang Xian's words were firm, as if there was no room for negotiation. Hand Duan Lingtian over to the supreme elder? How is that possible? Put aside the fact that Duan Lingtian possessed the super saint weapon, the Devil Seal Tablet, which was extremely important to the Zoroastrianism when the devil clans invaded the upper province. Tang Xian did not dare to hand Duan Lingtian over to the supreme elder due to Duan Lingtian's mysterious identity. He still suspected that Duan Lingtian might be the man the saint girl of the Zoroastrianism had found in the lower province. All he needed was an opportunity to confirm if Duan Lingtian was the man who had defiled the saint girl of the Zoroastrianism. If he was the saint girl, Duan Lingtian would definitely be killed by the people from the Zhuangzi Buddhism if he handed Duan Lingtian over to the supreme elder now. In the future, when the godlike powerhouse descended again and discovered that the person who had defiled the saint girl had been killed, he would be the one who handed Duan Lingtian over to the supreme elder. He would definitely vent his anger on the powerhouse and would not be able to escape death. This was because he knew very well, if Duan Lingtian was the one who had defiled the saint girl, he would die in the hands of the powerhouse. Although that powerhouse said the saint lady is his cousin's reincarnation, when he mentioned his cousin, there was a strong desire to possess her in the depths of his eyes. Tang Xian's heart skipped a beat when he thought of this. For this reason, before he could confirm if Duan Lingtian was the one who had defiled the saint girl, not only would he not hand Duan Lingtian over, but he also did not dare to do so. If Duan Lingtian was not the one who had defiled the saint girl, he would only lose the super saint weapon, the Devil Seal Tablet. If Duan Lingtian was the one who had defiled the saint girl, the Devil Seal Tablet would not be the only thing he would lose. Tang Xian and the people from the Zoroastrianism behind him would definitely be reduced to ashes by the powerhouse's wrath. It's not long before that powerhouse returns to our mundane realm, Duan Lingtian muttered to himself. Tang Xian shuddered when he recalled the powerhouse's words before he left. As it turned out, time was running out before the powerhouse returned to their mundane realm. In just a blink of an eye, almost 100 years had passed. Impossible? Lang Qianjin, the supreme elder of the Zhuangzi Buddhism, was horrified when he heard Tang Xian's domineering reply. His eyes flashed coldly. The people from the Zhuangzi Buddhism, standing behind Lang Qianjin, were horrified when they heard Tang Xian's domineering reply. Tang Xian, it seems like you're very confident after breaking through to the 9th form of the Saint Celestial stage. Chapter 2197. Lang Qianjin, the supreme elder of Zhuangzi Buddhism, said coldly. Everyone felt as though winter had arrived. In the past, I could only rely on my movement divine ability to escape from you, Elder Lang. Now I'd like to have a fight with you and see the gap between me and you. Tang Xian, the sect leader of Zoroastrianism, said calmly when he saw Lang Qianjin's angry and fierce gaze. His words also conveyed the same meaning. He was not afraid of fighting Lang Qianjin. In the past, when his cultivation base was at the 8th form of the Saint Celestial stage, he had fought Lang Qianjin, the supreme elder of Zhuangzi Buddhism. However, he could only flee each time since he was no match for Lang Qianjin. With the movement divine ability that the godlike powerhouse had taught him, even if his cultivation base was only at the 8th form of the Saint Celestial stage, a powerhouse at the 9th form of the Saint Celestial stage would not be able to stop him. A few years ago, he had relied on this divine ability to deter the Zhuangzi Buddhism and the heaven divination sect from attacking Zoroastrianism. Otherwise, Zoroastrianism would have been destroyed by the Zhuangzi Buddhism and the heaven divination sect, since they did not have a powerhouse at the ninth form of the Saint Celestial stage to rely on. This, Tang Xian's domineering attitude shocked the two great Karmapa, the sect leader, and the two vice-sect leaders of Zhuangzi Buddhism. Even the 5 great guardians of Zoroastrianism, including Duan Lingtian, were stunned. They did not expect the sect leader of Zoroastrianism would be so direct and domineering as to challenge the supreme elder of Zhuangzi Buddhism to a battle. Could he not be more tactful? They did not expect Tang Xian to be so direct and domineering. The reason Tang Xian was so direct and domineering was because of the godlike powerhouse he had met a few decades ago. Before he confirmed Duan Lingtian was not the man the saint girl of Zoroastrianism had found in the lower province. He did not dare to let anything happen to Duan Lingtian. If he confirmed Duan Lingtian was the man and he died, the godlike powerhouse would not be able to kill Duan Lingtian when he returned to the mundane realm. With that powerhouse's strength, not only would he die in a fit of rage, but the fire worship sect would also be implicated. For this reason, Tang Xian did not hesitate to challenge Lang Qianjin, the supreme elder of Zhuangzi Buddhism, who wanted to kill Duan Lingtian. He was not afraid of Lang Qianjin when his cultivation base was at the 8th form of the Saint Celestial stage. Not to mention now, Tang Xian's Xian was a Xian's Tian, the supreme elder of Xian. In the past, he could only run for his life whenever he encountered Lang Qianjin. However, now he was strong enough to fight Lang Qianjin. Naturally, if it was not for the godlike powerhouse, he would not have been so direct and domineering even if he wanted to fight Lang Qianjin. The reason he was so direct and domineering was because he was afraid of the godlike powerhouse. Don't tell me Duan Lingtian is the illegitimate son of the sect leader of Zoroastrianism? Lang Qianjin, the supreme elder of Zhuangzi Buddhism, was shocked by Tang Xian's domineering attitude. The other members of Zhuangzi Buddhism could not help but think to themselves, if Duan Lingtian was not the illegitimate son of the sect leader of Zoroastrianism, would Tang Xian be so protective of Duan Lingtian? Although the super saint weapon, the Devil Seal tablet, was precious, it was not enough for Tang Xian to fall out with Duan Lingtian. Apart from the people from Zhuangzi Buddhism, the other 4 guardians of Zoroastrianism, apart from Duan Lingtian, shared the same thought. However, there was one thing they were certain of. Duan Lingtian was not related to the sect leader of Zoroastrianism at all. Isn't the sect leader of Zoroastrianism a little too protective of me? Moreover, he seems to be a little too protective of me. At this moment, even Duan Lingtian himself was shocked by this unexpected favor. At the same time, he was stunned as well. What did he do to deserve the sect leader of Zoroastrianism to fall out with Lang Qianjin, the second strongest person in the Dao Martial Saint land for him? Good. After Lang Qianjin regained his senses, he repeated the word good a few times. It was obvious he was enraged by Tang Xian's words. However, since Tang Xian was willing to fall out with him, there was no way Lang Qianjin would fall out with him. In the past, Tang Xian would have been fine. However, Tang Xian was a powerhouse at the 9th form of the Saint Celestial stage just like him. Although Tang Xian was not as strong as him, the difference in strength was not too great. On top of that, Tang Xian was undefeatable with his peculiar movement divine ability. Lang Qianjin would not be able to gain any advantage if he fought Tang Xian. For this reason, he did not want to fight Tang Xian unless it was absolutely necessary. Tang Xian. Lang Qianjin took a deep breath to suppress the anger in his heart. Then he said to Tang Xian in a deep voice, Tang Xian, I know you value Duan Lingtian's super saint weapon, the Devil Seal tablet. It's very likely that the Devil Seal tablet isn't with him. He might have hidden it somewhere else. However, if you're willing to hand over Duan Lingtian to me, I, Lang Qianjin, Supreme Elder of Zhuangzi Buddhism, am willing to swear on the lightning penalty oath to make you a promise. In the future, no matter who obtains the Devil Seal tablet, I'll do my best to obtain it for you and hand it over to you. If the Devil Seal tablet is with him, I'll immediately hand it over to you after I kill him." Based on Lang Qianjin's words, it was obvious he thought Tang Xian was protecting Duan Lingtian because of the Super Saint weapon, the Devil Seal tablet, in Duan Lingtian's possession. If that was the case, he did not want the Devil Seal tablet. He was even willing to swear on the lightning penalty oath to give the Devil Seal tablet to Tang Xian. All he wanted was Duan Lingtian's life. By saying so, Lang Qianjin was, to a certain extent, making a concession and finding a way out for himself. Lang Qianjin, the supreme elder of Zhuangzi Buddhism, is afraid? Duan Lingtian was shocked. Initially, he thought Lang Qianjin would fight the sect leader of Zoroastrianism out of anger. He did not expect Lang Qianjin would take the initiative to compromise. However, when he thought about it, he felt relieved. A battle between powerhouses at the 9th form of the Saint Celestial stage was bound to be earth-shattering. Coupled with the divine ability that the sect leader of Fire Worship sect had mastered, that was widely acknowledged as the #1 movement divine ability in the Tao Martial Saint Land, he would not be defeated even if he fought with Lang Qianjin. It was normal for Lang Qianjin to be afraid. Although the others could understand why Lang Qianjin would compromise, they were still shocked. As soon as Lang Qianjin finished speaking, everyone turned to look at Tang Xian. Lang Qianjin had compromised. Would Tang Xian accept it? At this moment, even Duan Lingtian began to waver. He was not sure if Tang Xian would compromise or not. If he was in Tang Xian's shoes, he might have chosen to compromise as well. However, Tang Xian's response to Lang Qianjin stunned everyone, including Duan Lingtian. It doesn't matter if Duan Lingtian has the Super Saint weapon, the Devil Seal tablet. I won't hand him over to you today. These were Tang Xian's words. Although his tone was flat, there was no room for doubt in his tone. The entire place fell silent immediately. Sect leader. Duan Lingtian was stunned when he heard Tang Xian's words. He looked at Tang Xian with a hint of gratitude in his eyes. After all, it was rare for Tang Xian to go this far for him. Even someone with a heart of stone would be moved by Tang Xian's actions, right? Naturally, this was because Duan Lingtian did not know what Tang Xian was thinking. Otherwise, he would be worried instead of being touched. This was because Tang Xian had begun to suspect that he was the man the saint girl of Zoroastrianism had found in the lower province. Tang Xian. After a moment of silence, Lang Qianjin finally regained his senses and roared. His voice was like a clap of thunder that reverberated through the 9 heavens, causing the surrounding void to tremble. Lang Qianjin's roar contained rich saint origin. As soon as it spread out, it swept through the entire Zoroastrianism's base. The White Tiger Sanctum was the first to bear the brunt of it. Tang Xian. Tang Xian. When Lang Qianjin's roar reached the White Tiger Sanctum, it continued to reverberate in the White Tiger Sanctum. When Lang Qianjin's saint origin exploded, most of the disciples with a lower cultivation base in the White Tiger Sanctum bled from their 7 orifices. Some of them even fainted when they heard Lang Qianjin's roar. What's going on? Isn't that the voice of Lang Qianjin, the supreme elder of Zhuangzi Buddhism? He seems very angry. Don't tell me he's going to fight Lord Sect Leader? Heavens! So this is a powerhouse at the 9th form of the Saint Celestial stage? He's ranked 2nd on the Supreme Saint ranking? Although he's outside the Zoroastrianism's base, he managed to cause many of our White Tiger Sanctum's disciples to bleed from their 7 orifices. Some of them even fainted. Terrifying. This is too terrifying. As expected, a wave of panic swept through the White Tiger Sanctum. As for the other places, although it was not as tragic as the White Tiger Sanctum, most of them could not help but feel chills running up their spines when they heard Lang Qianjin's roar. Junior brother Ling Tian. The Lu brothers had unknowingly gathered together. When they heard the supreme elder of Zhuangzi Buddhism's roar, they became even more worried about Duan Lingtian. That's right. Supreme elder of Zhuangzi Buddhism. You must kill Duan Lingtian. When Yin clenched her fists in her residence, as she muttered to herself with a murderous look in her eyes. Duan Lingtian, you won't be able to escape this time. In the Sanctum Leader's residence in the Azure Dragon Sanctum, Hong had a delighted expression on his face. It was as though he could already see Duan Lingtian being killed. Outside the Zoroastrianism's base. Is Duan Lingtian really the illegitimate son of the sect leader of Zoroastrianism? Chapter 2198. Even the other four guardians of the Zoroastrianism sect looked at Tang Xian, the sect leader of the Zoroastrianism sect, with a hint of doubt in their eyes. At this moment, they realized the sect leader of the Zoroastrianism sect was acting strangely. Is it because of Ling Tian's innate talent that the sect leader doesn't want to give up on him? They could not help but think to themselves. After all, based on Duan Ling Tian's achievements at such a young age, even in the known history of the Dao Martial Saint Land, it was unprecedented. It had reached a stage that was shocking to hear. However, in the blink of an eye, they rejected this possibility. In their opinion, Duan Lingtian's achievements at such a young age were mostly due to the trap left behind by the three eminent devils. They speculated that trap was also a treasure trove, but most of the people who entered it were killed by the traps. Only those who were lucky would be able to avoid being killed by the trap and obtain all sorts of fortuitous encounters in the treasure vault. In their opinion, Duan Lingtian's achievements were extraordinary. Although Duan Lingtian's achievements were largely due to his innate talent, it was mostly due to the treasure vault left behind by the three eminent devils. Perhaps, Duan Lingtian's current strength was comparable to a powerhouse at the 8th form of the Saint Celestial stage. However, it would be difficult for him to improve. After all, his innate talent was not that heaven-defying. This could be seen from the innate spiritual root he obtained from the Zoroastrianism sect a few years ago. The four guardians of the Zoroastrianism sect were still in a state of shock and confusion. Boom! A loud explosion rang in the air. It was earth-shattering. In the next moment, a powerful shockwave swept out from where Lang Qianjin, the supreme elder of the Zhuangzi Buddhism sect, was standing. A mushroom-shaped shockwave appeared and swept out in all directions. Apart from Lang Qianjin and Tang Xian, the sect leader of Zoroastrianism, everyone present was sent flying. Even the few powerhouses at the 8th form of the Saint Celestial stage present on the scene were sent flying by the shockwave from Lang Qianjin's attack, since they were unprepared. As for the others, they were even worse off. On the other hand, because of Hua Lao's reminder, Duan Lingtian activated his divine ability, the elementary devouring technique, in time to strengthen his saint origin and cast his defensive divine ability, the Black Turtle's barrier. Although he was still sent flying, he was not as wretched as those powerhouses at the 8th form of the Saint Celestial stage. That Lang Qianjin can't hold back anymore? Duan Lingtian was sent flying. After barely managing to stabilize his body, his heart couldn't help but tremble. He could tell. Lang Qianjin couldn't bear it any longer and wanted to attack. Tang Xian, since you want to fight, I'll fulfill your wish. Just as Duan Lingtian had expected, Lang Qianjin's figure gradually disappeared as soon as he shouted. His speed was so fast that he left behind an afterimage. Bang! Before Duan Lingtian could regain his senses, he heard another earth-shattering explosion. It was not difficult for him to guess that Tang Xian, the sect leader of Zoroastrianism, had already fought with Lang Qianjin. Along with this earth-shattering explosion, an even more vast and majestic wave of air swept over. An even more exaggerated mushroom-shaped cloud appeared in the sky where Tang Xian was standing. Accompanying the mushroom cloud was an even more powerful and terrifying shockwave. Although the people present, including Duan Lingtian, were prepared, they were still pushed back by the shockwave. The two Zhuangzi Buddhism vice sect leaders, whose cultivation bases were only at the 6th form of the Saint Celestial stage, were sent flying by the shockwave, even though they were prepared. Not only that, but they also threw up mouthfuls of blood as they were sent flying. It was obvious they were severely injured as well. The power of this shockwave was more than just a little stronger than the previous shockwave. As the shockwave continued to spread in all directions, the White Tiger Sanctum, one of the 4 symbols sanctums of Zoroastrianism, was also affected. A terrifying shockwave swept out. Even though it had consumed a lot of energy along the way, It still managed to kill many of the White Tiger Sanctum's disciples with low cultivation bases when the shockwave swept out. These White Tiger Sanctum's disciples did not even have time to react before they were killed by the shockwave. Although some of the White Tiger Sanctum's disciples with higher cultivation bases managed to survive, they were still injured. Blood gushed out of their mouths and dyed half of the White Tiger Sanctum red. For a time, the White Tiger Sanctum had turned into a living hell. Did Hierarch His Excellency fight with Zhuangzi Buddhism's Grand Elder? The aftershock of a battle between two powerhouses at the 9th form of the Saint Celestial stage is able to kill so many disciples from the White Tiger Sanctum. It's hard to imagine how terrifying the source of the aftershock is. Many White Tiger Sanctum elders in the White Tiger Sanctum felt their hearts tighten. At the same time, they sighed with fear. The other members of the Zoroastrianism camp also realized that their leader, Tang Xian, and the supreme elder of the Zhuangzi Buddhism, Lang Qianjin, were fighting. What ability does that Duan Lingtian have to make Lord Hierarch take action for him? When Yan and her senior brother, Bu Hong, had grave expressions on their faces when they realized Tang Xian had already made his move. Initially, they thought Tang Xian was the strongest among them. Both Tang Xian, the sect leader of Zoroastrianism, and Lang Qianjin, the supreme elder of the Zhuangzi Buddhism, were powerhouses at the 9th form of the Saint Celestial stage. Both of them were at the peak of the Tao Martial Saint land. Naturally, they would not make a move easily. After all, once they made a move, it would be difficult for them to hold back. Moreover, one of them might even die. Any normal human being would treasure their own lives. Powerhouses at the 9th form of the Saint Celestial stage were the most important. The 9th form of the Saint Celestial stage was also known as the Celestial Ascension form. Once one passed the heavenly tribulation, one would be able to ascend to a higher realm. If one died at this moment, it would mean one would not be able to ascend to a higher realm. It would be a lifelong regret. For this reason, powerhouses at the 9th form of the Saint Celestial stage would rarely fight unless they were sworn enemies. For this reason, when Yan and Bu Hong could not figure out why Tang Xian had made his move, what's so special about Duan Lingtian? What's so special about him? Why is Lord Hierarch taking action for him? Lord Hierarch has made his move. Junior brother Ling Tian should be considered to have passed this stage. The Lu brothers, Lu Yun and Lu Mu, sighed in relief when they realized the sect leader of Zoroastrianism had made his move. At the same time, the entire Zoroastrianism was shaken by sect leader Tang Xian's move. Outside the Zoroastrianism's estate, when the terrifying shockwave swept out and killed many White Tiger Sanctum's disciples, Tang Xian, the sect leader of Zoroastrianism, seemed to have sensed the shockwave as well. With a flash, he left behind an afterimage. After the afterimage disappeared, Duan Lingtian and the others lost sight of Tang Xian. Humph! Lang Qianjin, the supreme elder of Zhuangzi Buddhism, snorted coldly and disappeared before Duan Lingtian and the others' eyes. Is sect leader trying to lure Lang Qianjin away? At this moment, Duan Lingtian figured out Tang Xian's plan. Bang! As soon as Duan Lingtian thought of this, another earth-shattering explosion reverberated in the air. Following that, Duan Lingtian could clearly see that Lu Xian's eyes were shining brightly. A cloud of mist thousands of meters away disappeared into thin air, as if it had been swallowed by something in an instant. At the same time, Duan Lingtian clearly saw another mushroom cloud. Tang Xian and Lang Qianjin were fighting again. They're fighting over there in just a blink of an eye. A moment later, the shockwave caused by the appearance of the mushroom cloud also spread out. The shockwave spread to Duan Lingtian and the others in just a blink of an eye. Of course, due to the large distance between them, the remnants of that power were much weaker than before. Even the two vice sect leaders of the Black Kshetra sect were not caught in the crossfire. The White Tiger Sanctum had fallen again. Although the remnant might of this power was much weaker than the remnant might of the previous power, it still managed to injure many of the White Tiger Sanctum's disciples when it swept through the entire White Tiger Sanctum. It also caused the other elders and disciples of the White Tiger Sanctum to tremble with fear. Outside the Zoroastrianism's estate, whoosh, 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 When they saw Tang Xian and Lang Qianjin leaving the Zoroastrianism's estate, the 5 Zoroastrianism's guardians, including Duan Lingtian, and the people from the Zhuangzi Buddhism, naturally followed the commotion. However, after following him a few times, the sounds they heard were getting softer and softer. Based on this, they could tell Tang Xian and Lang Qianjin were getting further and further away from them. In the end, there was no commotion at all. They had lost track of Tang Xian and Lang Qianjin. Is this the speed of a powerhouse at the 9th form of the Saint Celestial stage? Duan Lingtian's expression turned grave when he lost sight of Tang Xian and Duan Lingtian. At the same time, he realized how terrifying a powerhouse at the 9th form of the Saint Celestial stage was. Hualao, thank you. Duan Lingtian quickly thanked Hualao when he regained his senses. After all, it was because of Elder Hua's reminder that he was able to prepare himself in time before the shockwave caused by Lang Qianjin's explosive power swept over him. This allowed him to not be as miserable as the others. Hualao. In the past, whenever Duan Lingtian looked for Hualao to thank him, Hualao would respond. However, Duan Lingtian did not respond this time. He found it strange. However, when 3 sharp gazes swept over him, he immediately shifted his attention away from the fact that Elder Hua had ignored him. The 3 pairs of sharp eyes belonged to the 2 Karmapa of the Zhuangzi Buddhism and sect leader of the Zhuangzi Buddhism, inside the 7 Treasures Exquisite Pagoda. Chapter 2199. Naturally, Hualao, who was in the 7 Treasures Exquisite Pagoda, heard Duan Lingtian's words. However, he did not have the time to respond to Duan Lingtian. This was because he discovered that a mysterious figure had appeared out of nowhere. A tall figure that looked like a ghost entered the 7 Treasures Exquisite Pagoda silently, without being noticed by the current owner of the 7 Treasures Exquisite Pagoda, Duan Lingtian. You. Who are you? Hualao's eyes widened when he saw the tall figure that appeared out of thin air. It was as though he had seen a ghost. The tall figure was a young man dressed in a long blood-red robe. He was tall and sturdy. He had sword-like eyebrows and bright eyes. His face was handsome but pale. There was a sword-shaped mark between his brows. The sword-shaped mark was blood-red in color. It looked like a small blood-red sword that was imprinted between his eyebrows. It emitted a terrifying aura that seemed capable of destroying everything. The young man in crimson clothes stood there. Streaks of crimson sword shadows revolved around him, without any pattern. These sword silhouettes exuded a bloodthirsty and destructive aura. It made him look like a sword god who had walked out from the depths of hell. The blood-red young man did not move at all. He did not activate any energy on purpose, but he gave Hualao an oppressive feeling. After all, Hualao's strength had already recovered to the point where it was comparable to a celestial. He was much stronger than eminent celestials who had passed the heavenly tribulation. At this moment, Elder Hua felt fear from the bottom of his heart when he faced the red-clad young man in front of him. Hualao was on the verge of breaking down from the pressure the blood-red young man was exerting on him. If I'm not mistaken, the blood-red young man said slowly, this celestial pagoda must be the 7 Treasures Exquisite Pagoda in the Jade Emperor Heaven, right? Jade Emperor Heaven? 7 Treasures Exquisite Pagoda? Upon hearing the blood-red young man's words, Hualao's eyes widened, and his expression changed drastically. In his heart, waves of shock were also set off. Who was this blood-red young man? Not only did he recognize the 7 Treasures Exquisite Pagoda, but he even knew it was from the Jade Emperor Heaven. In the colossal world, among the countless mundane realms, there were 81 Devata realms like the Jade Emperor Heaven. However, the blood-red young man knew where the 7 Treasures Exquisite Pagoda came from. How could he not be shocked? He must be a powerhouse from a Devata realm. At this moment, Hualao could guess who the blood-red young man was. The other party was either from the Jade Emperor Heaven or from another Devata realm, and knew about the 7 Treasures Exquisite Pagoda, a celestial supreme treasure in the Jade Emperor Heaven. Although the 7 Treasures Exquisite Pagoda was a top celestial supreme treasure, it was not one of the top celestial supreme treasures in the Jade Emperor Heaven. Although it was one of the top celestial supreme treasures in the Jade Emperor Heaven, it was nothing in the Devata realms. For this reason, the Seven Treasures Exquisite Pagoda was well known in the Jade Emperor Heaven. However, not everyone in the Devata realms knew about it. The Seven Treasures Exquisite Pagoda is said to contain the seven treasures. The Seven Treasures Exquisite Pagoda are divided into 7 levels. The first level is the three-legged golden crow. The second level is the jasper celestial sword. The third level is the astonishing god halberd. The fourth level is the universe ruler. And the fifth level is, while Elder Hua's heart was in turmoil, the blood-red clothed young man continued speaking. As he spoke, he listed out the 7 treasures in the Seven Treasures Exquisite Pagoda. If I'm not mistaken, you must be the three-legged golden crow in the Seven Treasures Exquisite Pagoda. Am I right? As soon as the blood-red young man finished speaking, he looked at Hua Lao. Although his eyes were calm, Hua Lao could not help but feel intimidated. Yes, my lord. After taking a deep breath, Hua Lao mustered up the courage to speak. His voice was filled with dread and reverence when he spoke. This was because he discovered that the blood-red young man was much stronger than him. He discovered the blood-red young man was much stronger than him when he was at his peak. Moreover, the blood-red young man's aura seemed to be suppressing him. It was as though the blood-red young man was his nemesis. I think I've encountered a similar aura somewhere before. However, the aura at that time was not as strong as the one he's emitting. With this thought in mind, Elder Hua could not help but rack his brains. A moment later, a thought flashed through his mind, and he finally recalled it. When Hua Lao looked at the blood-red young man again, a hint of fear could be seen in his eyes. Hua Lao's voice trembled when he spoke again. My lord, you're a deity. It seems like you've guessed my origin. Before Hua Lao could finish speaking, the blood-red young man interrupted him. There was a hint of surprise in the blood-red young man's calm voice. It was apparent that he did not expect Elder Hua to be able to guess his origin. That's right. I'm the soul of the Devata artifact. The blood-red young man said bluntly. Devata artifact. Soul of the Devata artifact. Although Hua Lao had his suspicions, his heart could not help but tremble violently when he heard the blood-red young man's confirmation. At this moment, some of the questions in his heart were answered. As it turned out, he was still puzzled. How did the blood-red young man enter the Seven Treasures Exquisite Pagoda without the permission of the owner of the Seven Treasures Exquisite Pagoda? Why did the blood-red young man enter the Seven Treasures Exquisite Pagoda without alerting the owner? Why did this scarlet-robed young man give him a sense of suppression? Now he finally understood. The blood-red young man was the innate artifact soul of a Devata artifact, an acquired artifact soul that could suppress all celestial supreme treasures. For this reason, as the acquired artifact soul of a celestial supreme treasure, the Seven Treasures Exquisite Pagoda, it was normal for the blood-red young man to suppress him. It was even easier for the blood-red young man to enter the Seven Treasures Exquisite Pagoda. With the innate artifact soul of a Devata artifact, there was no way the blood-red young man could enter the Seven Treasures Exquisite Pagoda without alerting the owner of the Seven Treasures Exquisite Pagoda. It would be easy for the blood-red young man to remove the Seven Treasures Exquisite Pagoda from the owner of the Seven Treasures Exquisite Pagoda. After all, the blood-red young man was the innate artifact soul of a Devata artifact. A Devata artifact was above all celestial supreme treasures in the Devata realms. It was strong enough to suppress all celestial supreme treasures. There's only one Devata artifact in the Jade Emperor Heaven. It's in the hands of the Gautama Buddha. Back then, when Monkey Sun wreaked havoc in the heavenly palace, the Gautama Buddha relied on the Devata artifact to suppress him. Elder Hua was well aware of what had happened in the Jade Emperor Heaven back then. In terms of strength, Sun Wukong stood at the pinnacle of the Jade Emperor Heaven. The celestial supreme treasure in his hand, the Rui Jingu Bang, was one of the best celestial supreme treasures in the Jade Emperor Heaven. With his cultivation base, and a celestial supreme treasure like the Rui Jingu Bang, he could do whatever he wanted in the Jade Emperor Heaven, as long as the Gautama Buddha did not make a move. The Devata artifact in the hands of the Gautama Buddha is called the 10,000 Buddhist Celestial Imprisoning Seal. Back then, the soul of the 10,000 Buddhist Celestial Imprisoning Seal was ordered by the Gautama Buddha to look for Dipankara, the first owner of the 7 treasures exquisite pagoda. At that time, I sensed his aura in the 7 treasures exquisite pagoda. His aura was similar to the red-clad young man's aura. However, the red-clad young man's aura was much stronger than the red-clad young man's aura. In other words, the red-clad young man's Devata artifact soul is much stronger and more terrifying than the 10,000 Buddhas, celestial imprisoning seal, in the Jade Emperor Heaven's Gautama Buddha's possession. Hua Lao shuddered when he thought about this. It should be noted that even if he was at his peak, he would not be able to fight against the 10,000 Buddha's celestial imprisoning seal's soul imprint, let alone the soul of a Devata artifact that was much stronger than the 10,000 Buddha's celestial imprisoning seal. And my lord, may I know how to address you? With great difficulty, Elder Hua calmed his rapid breathing. He looked at the scarlet-clothed young man again and asked in a trembling voice. Elder Hua asked this question because he knew that in the Devata realms, the innate artifact souls of Devata artifacts did not only have their own consciousness, but they could also take human form and have their own name. For example, the soul imprint of the 10,000 Buddha's celestial imprisoning seal, a Devata artifact, possessed by the Gautama Buddha in the Jade Emperor Heaven. Not only was it famous in the Jade Emperor Heaven, but it was also famous in the Devata realms. Kuang Ling. In the face of Elder Hua's humble and respectful inquiry, the blood-red-clothed young man raised his head proudly and replied with an indifferent tone. Kuang Ling. Kuang Ling. Kuang Ling. The sword soul Kuang Ling. After pondering for a moment, Elder Hua's body suddenly trembled. Then, his face and eyes were filled with shock and disbelief. Sword soul Kuang Ling. The name sounded familiar at first. However, when he thought about it carefully, he recalled the meaning behind the name. Sword soul Kuang Ling. Isn't that the name of the innate soul of the Devata artifact in the solitary destructive heaven? That Devata artifact is called the solitary destructive flaming heavenly sword. It's the strongest sword-type Devata artifact in the Devata realms. Chapter 2200. A Devata artifact was a Devata artifact. It could give birth to a soul on its own. Since the soul was born from the Devata artifact, it was called the innate artifact soul. Celestial supreme treasures were celestial artifacts, but they did not have the ability to give birth to a soul. They could only seal a living being in the celestial artifact and turn it into the artifact's soul. For example, Hua Lao was sealed in the 7 treasures exquisite pagoda and became the pagoda spirit of the 7 treasures exquisite pagoda. On the other hand, a celestial artifact soul like Hua Lao was called an acquired artifact soul. Although an acquired artifact soul was not a celestial artifact, it could not leave the celestial artifact unless the owner of the celestial artifact was willing to sever its connection with the celestial artifact. On the other hand, an innate artifact soul was born from the Devata artifact, but it could leave the Devata artifact as it pleased. Although the two were similar, they were not on the same level at all. When the latter met the former, they could suppress the former to a certain extent. For example, when Elder Hua, the pagoda spirit of the 7 treasures exquisite pagoda, faced Kuang Ling, the sword soul of the divine artifact, the solitary extinguishing flaming heavenly sword, he would feel an inexplicable fear from the bottom of his soul, even though Kuang Ling did nothing. Why your lord Kuang Ling from the solitary destructive heaven? When Elder Hua recalled the origin of sword soul Kuang Ling, he took a deep breath. When he looked at sword soul Kuang Ling again, the fear and dread in his eyes had deepened. It seems like you've heard of me. The young man dressed in red, the sword soul of the Devata artifact, the solitary destructive flaming heavenly sword, said indifferently. How could I not know that you're the #1 divine sword in the Devata realm? Hua Lao smiled wryly. The solitary destructive flaming heavenly sword was the #1 divine sword in the Devata realm. Who in the Devata realm did not know about it? The #1 divine sword in the Devata realms? Kuang Ling narrowed his eyes when he heard Hua Lao's words. He shook his head and said, It seems like you've left the Devata realm for quite some time. A few years ago, the sword soul of the Yen Huang Xinyuan sword was on par with me. From then on, there was no longer the #1 divine sword in the Devata realm. There are only 2 divine swords in the Devata realm. As he spoke, Kuang Ling's tone was filled with emotion. He used to be the strongest divine sword in the Devata realms, but now another divine sword had caught up to him and was on par with him. Furthermore, the other party's potential was even greater than his. If he didn't make any breakthroughs, he would be overtaken sooner or later. Yanhuang Xianyuan sword. Elder Hu turned pale with fright when he heard Kuang Ling's words. Could the Yanhuang Xianyuan sword be the Xianyuan sword from the Jade Emperor Heaven's Gongsun Xianyuan? However, the Xianyuan sword was only an immortal weapon, wasn't it? How did it become an immortal weapon? If I'm not mistaken, Gongsun Xianyuan and his Yanhuang Xianyuan sword came from the Jade Emperor Heaven. Kuang Ling continued to speak. Yes. Hearing Kuang Ling's words, Elder Hu regained his senses and quickly nodded. At the same time, his heart was in turmoil. He was certain Kuang Ling was the Yanhuang Xianyuan sword. The Yanhuang Xianyuan sword was the Xianyuan sword he knew. Wu Lao did not expect something so big would happen while he was away from the Devata realms. Not only had the Xianyuan sword become a Devata artifact, but it was also on par with the number 1 divine sword in the Devata realms, the solitary destructive flaming heavenly sword. Both were known as the 2 divine swords in the Devata realms. Are you curious as to why I would appear in this small mundane plane? Kuang Ling asked. Wu Lao nodded. Indeed, he was curious about this. The solitary destructive flaming heavenly sword used to be the number 1 divine sword in the Devata realms. Although the Yanhuang Xianyuan sword had caught up to it, it was still powerful. The owner of the solitary destructive flaming heavenly sword and the sword soul of the solitary destructive flaming heavenly sword were famous powerhouses in the Devata realms. How could he not be curious about the appearance of such a powerhouse in this mundane realm? Naturally, he was not surprised by the appearance of such a powerhouse in this mundane realm. Kuang Ling, the sword soul of the solitary destructive flaming heavenly sword, was so powerful that he could easily break through the void and travel between Devata realms and mundane realms. I'm here for your current master, Kuang Ling said. Kuang Ling nodded. Yes. Wu Lao inhaled sharply as soon as Kuang Ling finished speaking. He instinctively extended his divine consciousness out of the 7 treasures exquisite pagoda and looked at the purple-clad young man. The purple-clad young man was his current master, Duan Lingtian. At this moment, Duan Lingtian was unaware of what was happening in the 7 treasures exquisite pagoda. At this moment, he and the other 4 guardians of the Zoroastrianism were facing off against the Zhuangzi Buddhism's group. The group led by the 2 great Karmapa of the Zhuangzi Buddhism was glaring at Duan Lingtian fiercely. Their eyes were filled with killing intent as they looked at Duan Lingtian. The atmosphere at the scene became extremely solemn at this moment. The atmosphere was tense as though a battle would break out at any moment between the Zoroastrianism and the Zhuangzi Buddhism's group. Whoosh! Whoosh! The sound of wind whistling rang in the air as 2 figures appeared behind Duan Lingtian and the others from the Zoroastrianism's group. 5 guardians, we're here to help you. The 2 figures were none other than the 2 vice sect leaders of the Zoroastrianism. As soon as they appeared, they immediately looked at the 2 vice sect leaders of the Zhuangzi Buddhism's group. The 2 great Karmapa of the Zhuangzi Buddhism and the sect leader of the Zhuangzi Buddhism's group remained calm when they saw the 2 vice sect leaders of the Zoroastrianism. On the other hand, the 2 vice sect leaders of the Zhuangzi Buddhism sighed in relief. If the 2 vice sect leaders of the Zoroastrianism sect did not appear, it meant they would have to face the 5 guardians of the Zoroastrianism sect, who were powerhouses at the 7th form of the Saint Celestial stage, or above. They shuddered when they thought about it. They were in a dilemma. They sighed in relief when the 2 vice sect leaders of the Zoroastrianism sect leaders appeared. As for the 2 great Karmapa of the Zhuangzi Buddhism and the vice sect leader of the Zhuangzi Buddhism, they did not think much of the 2 vice sect leaders of the Zoroastrianism sect at all. With the strength of the vice sect leaders of the Zoroastrianism sect leaders, they would not be able to interfere in a battle between powerhouses at the 7th form of the Saint Celestial stage. Duan Lingtian remained calm when he saw the situation. It was as though he would not even bat an eyelid, even if Mount Tai collapsed in front of him. Put aside the fact that Lang Qianjin, the supreme elder of the Zhuangzi Buddhism, was not here. Even if Lang Qianjin was here, Duan Lingtian would still dare to show himself. Since Duan Lingtian had shown himself, it meant he was prepared for the worst. The leader of Zoroastrianism pushed him out and handed him over to Zhuangzi Buddhism. While he was preparing for the worst, he had also thought of a way to deal with it. Everything revolved around the greed of Zhuangzi Buddhism, Grand Elder Lang Qianjin. From the false statement that Lang Qianjin had made to the outside world, it could be seen that he was very interested in the super god weapon. Naturally, Duan Lingtian knew Lang Qianjin did not care about the super saint weapon, the Devil Seal Tablet. This could be seen from his promise to Tang Xian, the sect leader of Zoroastrianism. He was more interested in the super saint weapon, the Traceless Sword, compared to the Devil Seal Tablet, which was a super saint weapon with a lot of restrictions. Lang Qianjin and the others would definitely want an offensive-type super saint weapon like the Traceless Sword. If Tang Xian pushes me out and hands me over to the people from the Zhuangzi Buddhism, I'll lure him into the Seven Treasures Exquisite Pagoda, using the greed of Lang Qianjin, the supreme elder of the Zhuangzi Buddhism. Once he's lured into the Seven Treasures Exquisite Pagoda, Huolao will definitely be able to kill him. As long as I kill him, I won't have to be afraid of the people from the Zhuangzi Buddhism. This was the plan Duan Lingtian had prepared for a long time ago. When he found out Lang Qianjin, the supreme elder of the Zhuangzi Buddhism, was leading a group of people against him, he had already prepared this plan. He had gone to great lengths to lure Lang Qianjin into the Seven Treasures Exquisite Pagoda. He believed with Lang Qianjin's greed, even if he was suspicious, he would not be able to resist the temptation of a celestial supreme treasure, like the Seven Treasures Exquisite Pagoda. Even if Lang Qianjin was cautious and did not dare to enter the Seven Treasures Exquisite Pagoda, he would not be willing to kill Duan Lingtian before he entered the Seven Treasures Exquisite Pagoda. Duan Lingtian had already calculated every step of the way. For this reason, Duan Lingtian was fearless when he came out with the sect leader of Zoroastrianism and the four guardians of Zoroastrianism. If Lang Qianjin was here, he might have been a little afraid. However, now that Lang Qianjin was not here, he had to face the people from the Zhuangzi Buddhism. Put aside the fact that he had the Zoroastrianism powerhouses by his side, even if he was alone, what did Duan Lingtian have to fear? Guardian Zifeng, Guardian Qinghua, Guardian Hong Yun, Guardian Lung Ying. At this moment, the sect leader of Zhuangzi Buddhism looked at the four guardians apart from Duan Lingtian. His eyes were cold. Today, it's a feud between the Zhuangzi Buddhism and Duan Lingtian. I hope the four guardians won't interfere. Otherwise, I can't guarantee the safety of the four guardians. The sect leader of Zhuangzi Buddhism spoke as though he was certain the people from the Zoroastrianism would be defeated. Ha 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 ha. Lung Ying could not help but laugh when he heard the sect leader of Zhuangzi Buddhism's words. Duan Lingtian was stunned. He did not know where the sect leader of Zhuangzi Buddhism got his confidence from. The others were shocked as well. Did the sect leader of Zhuangzi Buddhism really think he could defeat all of them? Although the Zhuangzi Buddhism had two powerhouses at the eighth form of the Saint Celestial stage, who were stronger than Zifeng from the Zoroastrianism, the sect leader of Zhuangzi Buddhism had two powerhouses at the eighth form of the Saint Celestial stage. Chapter 2201. Although Duan Lingtian had rarely made a move since he had returned to the fire worship sect, Duan Lingtian's cultivation base was still quite high. However, he had defeated Lung Ying, the hall master of the Zoroastrianism Enforcement Hall, who was also the current guardian of Zoroastrianism, with just 3 strikes. Although Lung Ying had just broken through to the 7th form of the Saint Celestial stage, his strength was not weak at all due to the divine abilities he had mastered. Even Guardian Hong Yun admitted she was no match for him. Moreover, even Zifeng, the former leader of the 3 guardians of Zoroastrianism, did not dare to say he could defeat Lung Ying with just 3 strikes. For this reason, after Duan Lingtian defeated Lung Ying with just 3 strikes, he was widely acknowledged as the strongest of the 5 guardians of Zoroastrianism. Even Zifeng, the former leader of the three guardians of Zoroastrianism, did not object to this. For this reason, Lung Ying could not help but laugh when he heard sect leader of Zhuangzi Buddhism's words. He wondered where sect leader of Zhuangzi Buddhism got his confidence from. Sect leader of Zhuangzi Buddhism, right? Duan Lingtian looked at sect leader of Zhuangzi Buddhism and asked mockingly, "Based on your words, you think you can defeat us now that our sect leader of Zoroastrianism is not here?" What a joke! Before sect leader of Zhuangzi Buddhism could reply, Hong Yun scoffed. Our sect leader of Zoroastrianism is not here. But don't forget that the supreme elder of Zhuangzi Buddhism is not here as well. Although Zifeng, Qinghua, and Lung Ying did not say anything, they looked at sect leader of Zhuangzi Buddhism with a hint of mockery in their eyes. Ha 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 ha. As soon as Hong Yun finished speaking, sect leader Zhuangzi Buddhism burst into laughter again. The sudden and wanton laughter caused Duan Lingtian and the rest to involuntarily frown. Was the leader of Zhuangzi Buddhism crazy? Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. While the head of the Zhuangzi Buddhism family was laughing loudly, many figures came from the direction of the Zoroastrianism camp. They were the higher-ups of the Zoroastrianism family. These higher-ups were either Golden Flame Elders or Vice Hall Masters of the Law Enforcement Hall. Lu Tai, the Sanctum leader of the Azure Dragon Sanctum, and Lu Qing, the Sanctum leader of the White Tiger Sanctum, were among them. As for the elders and disciples of Zoroastrianism, none of them had come. Even if they had come, it would have been useless. They could only serve as cannon fodder. Even if Lu Tai, Lu Qing, and the others came, they could only watch from afar and wait for an opportunity to attack. If they rashly went up, they could only be reduced to cannon fodder. What's the situation now? Why is the sect leader of Zhuangzi Buddhism laughing so loudly? Could something have happened to Lord Sect Leader? I don't think so. If something had happened to Lord Sect Leader, how could Lang Qianjin, the Supreme Elder of Zhuangzi Buddhism, not be here? Lord Sect Leader and Lang Qianjin have disappeared. Lord Sect Leader must have lured them away, right? I think so. After all, if a fight between powerhouses of their level gets too close to the Zoroastrianism camp, the outer disciples of the Zoroastrianism, four symbols sanctums would be the ones in trouble. The group of Golden Flame Elders and Vice Hall Masters of Zoroastrianism discussed among themselves. They could vaguely guess the reason why the sect leader of Zoroastrianism and the Supreme Elder of Zhuangzi Buddhism were not here. The strength of a powerhouse at the ninth form of the Saint Celestial stage is too terrifying. Earlier, when Lord Sect Leader and Lang Qianjin fought, just the aftershock of their strength alone killed many of our White Tiger Sanctum's disciples. Lu Qing, the Sanctum leader of White Tiger Sanctum, had a grave expression on his face. At the same time, he felt slightly wronged. Whether it was the fact that many of his White Tiger Sanctum's disciples were killed by the aftershock of a powerhouse at the ninth form of the Saint Celestial stage, or the time when he was beaten up by Duan Lingtian, it was all because of the White Tiger Sanctum's location. The White Tiger Sanctum was located in the east of the Zoroastrianism's estate. It was close to the central region. Duan Lingtian had to pass through the White Tiger Sanctum to enter the Zoroastrianism's estate after returning from the central region. Zhuangzi Buddhism and the others had come from the central region to the western region. They had arrived outside the Zoroastrianism's estate and were the closest to the White Tiger Sanctum. Due to this reason, Lu Qing was filled with mixed feelings. He wished he could move to another location with the other three sanctums. All of a sudden, a voice transmission rang in the ears of the group of Zoroastrianism's Golden Flame Elders and the Vice Hall Masters of the Enforcement Hall. They had received the same voice transmission from one of the vice sect leaders of Zoroastrianism. The content of the voice transmission was nothing more than an update on the current situation. It's just as we've guessed. Lord Sect Leader has indeed lured Lang Qianjin, the Supreme Elder of Zhuangzi Buddhism, away. The eyes of many high-ranking Zoroastrianism officials lit up when they heard the vice sect leader's words. Sect leader of Zhuangzi Buddhism wants the four guardians to stay out of Guardian Ling Tian's matter? Otherwise, how can he guarantee the safety of the four guardians? Does he really think he can defeat the five guardians of Zoroastrianism with just a few of them? What a joke! Put aside the fact that Guardian Zifeng of Zoroastrianism is a powerhouse at the 8th form of the Saint Celestial stage. Guardian Ling Tian's strength is not inferior to Guardian Zifeng. Where does he get his confidence from? Overconfidence is arrogance. The sect leader of the Black Kshetra sect is the leader of a sect. How could he be so arrogant? How pathetic! When the high-ranking Zoroastrianism officials learned about the current situation and heard sect leader of Zhuangzi Buddhism's laughter, they could not help but sneer. After a while, sect leader of Zhuangzi Buddhism finally stopped laughing. For guardians, I'll give all of you one last chance. Now hand over Duan Lingtian. If you can't bear to do this to your own people, you can turn around and return to Zoroastrianism. Otherwise, all of you will die here today. After sect leader of Zhuangzi Buddhism stopped laughing, his eyes turned cold as he said in a clear voice, I'll give all of you the span of 10 breaths. If you don't make a decision after 10 breaths, don't blame me, Zhuangzi Buddhism, for being merciless. The sect leader of Black Kshetra sect said coldly. His tone was threatening. Humph. As soon as sect leader of Zhuangzi Buddhism finished speaking, Zifeng, the leader of the 3 guardians of Zoroastrianism, scoffed coldly. His elegant and handsome face also seemed to be covered with a layer of frost, and the cold air was oppressive. Let alone 10 breaths. Even if you give us more time, we won't give up on Ling Tian. Zifeng said coldly, if you want to fight, let's fight. There's no coward in Zoroastrianism. Lung Ying moved closer to Zifeng to express his support for Zifeng. He did not forget to speak to sect leader of Zhuangzi Buddhism, and the others coldly. Although Qing Hua and Hong Yin did not say anything, their attitude could be seen from the way they moved closer to Zifeng. They did not want to give up on Duan Lingtian. Sect leader of Zoroastrianism had already made it clear. Zoroastrianism would never give up on Duan Lingtian. For the sake of Duan Lingtian, sect leader of Zoroastrianism was willing to fight against the supreme elder of Zhuangzi Buddhism. Put aside the fact that the current situation was not in their favor. Even if it was, they would not go against the sect leader of fire worship sect's wish to protect Duan Lingtian. If you want to fight, let's fight. There's no coward in Zoroastrianism. Lung Ying's strong and decisive words were heard by the Golden Flame elders and the vice hall masters of the law enforcement hall in the distance. They felt their blood boiling. Lung Ying is right. There's no coward in Zoroastrianism. Sect leader of Zhuangzi Buddhism. Do they really think they can defeat us? Ridiculous. Ridiculous. The higher-ups of Zoroastrianism continued to mock sect leader of Zhuangzi Buddhism. Good. Good. Very good. On the other hand, sect leader of Zhuangzi Buddhism was so angry that his face turned pale when he heard the words of the 4 great guardians of Zoroastrianism. As his furious words rang out, a jade slip appeared in his hand. Crack. In just a blink of an eye, he crushed the jade slip. A stream of light soared into the sky and exploded high up in the sky. It was like a signal flare, sending a signal to someone. They have more people. The people from Zoroastrianism could not help but frown when they saw this. Even Duan Lingtian narrowed his eyes in a timely manner. They're here. All of a sudden, Duan Lingtian lifted his head and looked at the sky in the east. The sky was filled with clouds, but it was calm. He could not see anything. After Duan Lingtian looked in the direction of the clouds, Zifeng, the sect leader of Zoroastrianism, lifted his head and looked in the direction of the clouds. He seemed to have noticed something as well. Whoosh! At the same time, the sound of wind whistling could be heard from behind the clouds. The people from Zoroastrianism could not help but look in the direction of the sound as well. Whoosh! When the group of people looked over, the clouds suddenly swayed. Soon after, a ghost-like figure descended from the sky. His speed was ridiculously fast. The high-ranking officials of Zoroastrianism, who were standing in the distance, including the Golden Flame Elder and the Vice Hall Master of the Enforcement Hall, could not see the figure clearly. The 2 vice sect leaders of Zoroastrianism, who were at the 6th form of the Saint Celestial stage, the Heavenly Eye form, could only vaguely see the figure. It was a skinny figure. They could not see the other party's appearance or characteristics. A powerhouse at the 8th form of the Saint Celestial stage? It seems like he's not an ordinary powerhouse at the 8th form of the Saint Celestial stage. The expressions of Zifeng, Qinghua, Hong Yun, and Leng Ying changed slightly. A hint of dread could be seen in their eyes when they realized the other party was not an ordinary person. He has a helper. Duan Lingtian narrowed his eyes as he looked at the other party. Whoosh! Soon after, the other party appeared. Hao Shuang. Protector Zifeng's expression changed drastically when he saw the figure and face of the person who had just arrived. Chapter 2202. Hao Shuang was a young man with a thin body. He had long snow-white hair and a pair of snow-white eyebrows, but his skin was as tender as a baby's. It could be said that he had white hair and a youthful face. In addition, there seemed to be a smile on his handsome and delicate face at all times. Apart from being ranked 5th on the Supreme Saint ranking, Hao Shuang was also a sectless cultivator. He was the strongest sectless cultivator after Nie Wu Tian, the strongest person in the Dao Martial Saint land. Before Tang Xian, the sect leader of Zoroastrianism, had broken through to the 9th form of the Saint Celestial stage, he was only the second strongest person under the 9th form of the Saint Celestial stage in the Dao Martial Saint land. Ever since Tang Xian had broken through to the 9th form of the Saint Celestial stage, Hao Shuang had replaced Tang Xian as the strongest person under the 9th form of the Saint Celestial stage in the Dao Martial Saint land. The strongest person under the 9th form of the Saint Celestial stage was invincible in the Dao Martial Saint land. For this reason, the expression of Zifeng, the former leader of the 3 guardians of the fire worship sect, changed drastically when he recognized Duan Lingtian. His heart sank. He had never expected that Hao Shuang would appear here. Moreover, Hao Shuang was the helper sect leader of Zhuangzi Buddhism had found. Hao Shuang. Apart from Duan Lingtian, the people from the Zoroastrianism were stunned when they heard Zifeng's exclamation. Their expressions changed when they saw Hao Shuang. Qinghua, Hong Yun, and Leng Ying in particular had a grave expression on their faces. Previously, they thought Hao Shuang was confident in his strength. Compared to them, Zhuangzi Buddhism did not have an advantage. The sect leader of Black Kshetra sect's confidence was nothing more than a joke to them. However, they finally knew where the sect leader of Black Kshetra sect's confidence came from. As it turned out, he had found a helper. Moreover, it was a sectless cultivator who was ranked 5th on the Supreme Saint ranking. He was the strongest person under the 9th form of the Saint Celestial stage in the Dao Martial Saint land. Such a person was almost invincible under the 9th form of the Saint Celestial stage in the Dao Martial Saint land. As long as a powerhouse at the 9th form of the Saint Celestial stage did not make a move, nobody in the Dao Martial Saint land was a match for him. If they were evenly matched with the people from the Black Kshetra sect earlier, they would not be able to defeat them. But now, they were much weaker than him. Hao Shuang, the sectless cultivator ranked 5th on the Supreme Saint ranking? At the same time, the Golden Flame Elder of the Zoroastrianism and the Vice Hall Master of the Law Enforcement Hall, who were standing in the distance, had a horrified expression on their faces when they found out about Hao Shuang's identity. Ever since Lord Sect Leader had broken through to the 9th form of the Saint Celestial stage, Hao Shuang has become the strongest person below the 9th form of the Saint Celestial stage. I can't believe Zhuangzi Buddhism managed to invite him here. Damn it! Now that he's here, our advantage is gone. From the looks of it, sect leader Zhuangzi Buddhism wasn't being arrogant at all. Instead, he had planned this all along. He knew that we had no chance of winning once Hao Shuang showed up. What should we do now? If Hao Shuang really helps Zhuangzi Buddhism, the 5 guardians won't be a match for him at all. As for us, we'll only be cannon fodder at that time. The Golden Flame Elder and the Vice Hall Master of the Law Enforcement Hall had a horrified expression on their faces as they discussed in hushed voices. Hao Shuang's appearance had not only surprised the 4 great guardians of Zoroastrianism, but it had also caught them by surprise. Hao Shuang, the strongest person below the 9th form of the Saint Celestial stage? Duan Lingtian was the only one who was calm among the people from Zoroastrianism. After learning about Hao Shuang's identity, Duan Lingtian studied Hao Shuang curiously. A powerhouse who's ranked 5th on the Supreme Saint ranking. Based on his strength, he must have broken through to the peak of the 8th form of the Saint Celestial stage, right? Unlike the people from Zoroastrianism, the people from Zhuangzi Buddhism were filled with vitality. Brother Hao, you're here. The sect leader of Zhuangzi Buddhism smiled when he saw Hao Shuang. Hao Shuang was the trump card of the people from Zhuangzi Buddhism. Since they had expected this, they had come prepared. Now that the supreme elder of Zhuangzi Buddhism and the sect leader of Zoroastrianism had left, it meant they could no longer rely on powerhouses at the 9th form of the Saint Celestial stage. The remaining people from Zhuangzi Buddhism and the people from Zoroastrianism were in a stalemate. At this moment, they needed a powerhouse who could break the stalemate. Hao Shuang was the most suitable candidate. After all, Hao Shuang was widely acknowledged as the strongest person below the 9th form of the Saint Celestial stage in the Tao Martial Saint land. Apart from powerhouses at the 9th form of the Saint Celestial stage, nobody would be a match for him. Mr. Hao Shuang, the two great Karmapa of Zhuangzi Buddhism, the Violet Dragon King and the White Tiger King, greeted Hao Shuang warmly when they saw him. Although they were powerhouses at the 8th form of the Saint Celestial stage like Hao Shuang, they knew their limits. Even if they joined forces, they might not be a match for Hao Shuang. Lord Hao Shuang. The two vice-sect leaders of Zhuangzi Buddhism bowed respectfully at Hao Shuang. Yes. Hao Shuang nodded indifferently when he heard the greetings from the people from Zhuangzi Buddhism. He swept his gaze across the people from Zoroastrianism before it landed on Duan Lingtian. He locked his gaze on Duan Lingtian. You're Duan Lingtian? The new guardian of Zoroastrianism? The #1 prodigy in the Tao Martial Saint land? Hao Shuang asked curiously as he looked at Duan Lingtian. I don't dare to call myself the strongest prodigy in the Tao Martial Saint land. However, I think I'm slightly stronger than trash like Zhuangzi Buddhism. Duan Lingtian replied indifferently. He did not hesitate to mock the people from Zhuangzi Buddhism. Since they had come looking for him and were determined to kill him, there was no reason for him to be courteous. Duan Lingtian. As expected, Duan Lingtian's words infuriated the people from Black Kshetra sect. All of them glared at Duan Lingtian furiously. You have a glib tongue. I wonder if you're as powerful as the rumors say you are. Hao Shuang's eyes narrowed into slits as a cold light flashed through them. What? Do you want to try? Duan Lingtian's tone remained indifferent, as though he was talking about an insignificant matter. Yes, I want to try. Hao Shuang nodded. Then you have to think about it carefully. There are some things that once you try, there's no turning back. It's just like how there's no turning back once you release the arrow. Duan Lingtian enunciated each and every word clearly. There was no lack of threat in his words. Are you that confident? Hao Shuang opened his eyes abruptly. A cold light shot out from his eyes like a sharp blade that could destroy everything in its path. Upon hearing Duan Lingtian's words, the people from Zhuangzi Buddhism could not help but sneer. Duan Lingtian, do you think you'll be able to scare brother Hao with just this little trick of yours? What a joke! The sect leader of Zhuangzi Buddhism was the first to scoff. When Master Hao Shuang was roaming the Tao Martial Saint land, I'm afraid you, Duan Lingtian, weren't even born yet. Do you think you can play tricks on Master Hao Shuang? The White Tiger King of Zhuangzi Buddhism sneered. Although the Violet Dragon King and the two vice-sect leaders of Zhuangzi Buddhism remained silent, their eyes were filled with mockery as they looked at Duan Lingtian. Duan Lingtian and Hao Shuang were on the verge of breaking out into a fight. Mr. Hao Shuang, Zifeng, the guardian of Zoroastrianism, looked at Hao Shuang and said solemnly, I wonder what benefits did Zhuangzi Buddhism promise you? If you're willing to stay out of this, Zoroastrianism is willing to give you double the benefits. Although Zifeng admitted he was not as strong as Duan Lingtian, he did not have high hopes for the battle between Duan Lingtian and Hao Shuang. After all, Hao Shuang was not an ordinary powerhouse at the 8th form of the Saint Celestial stage. Previously, the sect leader of the Fire Worship sect had fought with Hao Shuang. According to their sect leader, if it was not for the fact that he had mastered the divine ability, that was widely acknowledged as the #1 movement divine ability in the Tao martial saint land, he might not have been a match for Hao Shuang. From this, it could be seen that Hao Shuang's strength had reached a terrifying level. Moreover, the sect leader of Zoroastrianism had said Hao Shuang would be the next powerhouse at the 9th form of the Saint Celestial stage in the Tao martial saint land. Guardian Ling Tian, the guardian of Zoroastrianism, did not have high hopes for someone like Hao Shuang. For this reason, he planned to lure Hao Shuang with benefits. He did not want Hao Shuang to change sides. He only wanted Hao Shuang to stay out of this. Humph. Upon hearing Zifeng's words, Hao Shuang glanced at him coldly. Guardian Zifeng, do you think I, Hao Shuang, am a two-faced villain? Zifeng was stunned when he heard Hao Shuang's words. Today, no matter what you or the Zoroastrianism promise me, I'm destined to stand on the side of Zhuangzi Buddhism and help Zhuangzi Buddhism. I, Hao Shuang, am a reputable person in the Tao martial saint land. I won't let the Zoroastrianism ruin my reputation. Hao Shuang's words made his stance clear. Guardian Zifeng, don't waste your energy. The sect leader of Zhuangzi Buddhism looked at Zifeng mockingly. I gave you a chance earlier, but you didn't cherish it. Don't blame us for not showing mercy now. Humph. I don't believe you have the guts to kill us. If you kill us, our sect leader will personally come to the Zhuangzi Buddhism and annihilate the Zhuangzi Buddhism. Lung Ying looked at the sect leader of Zhuangzi Buddhism coldly and said, with our sect leader's current strength, even the supreme elder of Zhuangzi Buddhism won't be able to stop him if he wants to kill the people from the Zhuangzi Buddhism. When Tang Xian, the sect leader of Zoroastrianism, was only at the 8th form of the Saint Celestial stage, he could easily escape from the supreme elder of Zhuangzi Buddhism with the help of the #1 movement divine ability in the Tao martial saint land. Let alone now. If he wanted to, he could annihilate the entire Zhuangzi Buddhism under the watch of the supreme elder of Zhuangzi Buddhism. Chapter 2203. The eyes of the people from the Zoroastrianism lit up when they heard Frigid Eagle's words. Humph. The sect leader of the Zhuangzi Buddhism snorted coldly. His expression darkened immediately. Naturally, he knew what Frigid Eagle was talking about. For this reason, he had never thought of killing the other guardians of the Zoroastrianism. He only wanted to teach them a painful lesson. He did not have the guts to kill the guardians of the Zoroastrianism. It was fine if it was just Duan Lingtian. After all, they had a legitimate reason to attack. Even if they were killed, the sect leader of the Zoroastrianism would not dare to act rashly. If he did, the supreme elder of the Zhuangzi Buddhism would be able to break into the Zoroastrianism and kill them. However, if he killed the guardians of the Zoroastrianism, it would be equivalent to cutting off all the pillars of the Zoroastrianism. It would definitely enrage the sect leader of the Zoroastrianism. At that time, the sect leader of the Zoroastrianism would definitely avenge them at all costs. Just as Frigid Eagle had said, if the Zoroastrianism decided to attack the Zhuangzi Buddhism, even the supreme elder of the Zhuangzi Buddhism would not be able to stop them. At that time, the people of the Zhuangzi Buddhism would definitely be plunged into misery and suffering. For this reason, he had never thought of killing the other guardians of the Zoroastrianism other than Duan Lingtian. Even if it was Duan Lingtian, he would not kill him unless it was absolutely necessary. He wanted to bring Duan Lingtian back to the Zhuangzi Buddhism because he wanted to find out how Duan Lingtian's strength improved so much in the trap left behind by the 3 eminent devils. As long as they could force the secret out of him, the cultivation of the higher-ups of Zhuangzi Buddhism would definitely improve tremendously. Even if there were no secrets, they still had to kill Duan Lingtian. This was to prevent the people from the Tao martial saint land from saying that Zhuangzi Buddhism was inferior to Zoroastrianism, and that they did not dare to seek revenge from Zoroastrianism. Protector Lung Ying, you're right. We don't dare to kill you. But do you dare to kill us? The White Tiger King looked at Frigid Eagle and sneered. The only reason we are here today is Duan Lingtian. If you insist on staying, although we don't dare to kill you, we can't avoid making you suffer some physical pain. You can't blame us. Our sect master has already given you a chance, but you didn't grasp it properly. The sneer on the White Tiger King's face deepened when he reached the end of his sentence. If Mr. Hao wasn't here, we might be evenly matched. Now that Mr. Hao is here to deal with Duan Lingtian, the strongest among all of you, I'd like to see how the rest of you are going to deal with us. The White Tiger King sneered. Based on his words, it was clear he was confident he could defeat the people from the Zoroastrianism. Before the people from the Black Kshetra sect came, they had already assessed Duan Lingtian's strength, since he was now a guardian of the fire worship sect. In the end, they had no choice but to accept that Duan Lingtian was the strongest among the 5 great protectors of Zoroastrianism. This was because not only did Duan Lingtian kill the Golden Lion King from the Zhuangzi Buddhism with 3 strikes, but he had also defeated Lung Ying, the hall master of the Zoroastrianism Enforcement Hall, whose cultivation base had broken through to the 7th form of the Saint Celestial stage. Previously, the people from the Zhuangzi Buddhism had also evaluated Lung Ying's strength. Once Lung Ying had broken through to the 7th form of the Saint Celestial stage, his strength was on par with Qing Hua from the Zoroastrianism. He was stronger than Hong Yun from the Zoroastrianism, and was in no way inferior to the sect leader of the Zhuangzi Buddhism. Such a person was defeated by Duan Lingtian with 3 strikes. In the Zhuangzi Buddhism, even the Violet Dragon King and the White Tiger King did not dare to say they could defeat Lung Ying, who was at the 7th form of the Saint Celestial stage in 3 strikes. For this reason, the people from the Zhuangzi Buddhism sect made a bold guess about Duan Lingtian's strength. The Violet Dragon King and the White Tiger King, who were in no way inferior to the Zhuangzi Buddhism sect, might be evenly matched or even stronger. For this reason, the people from the Zhuangzi Buddhism sect decided to seek outside help. In the end, they found Hao Shuang, who was ranked 5th on the Supreme Saint ranking. He was widely acknowledged as the strongest person below the 9th form of the Saint Celestial stage in the Tao Martial Saint land. In their opinion, Hao Shuang was not weak at all. Although Duan Lingtian was strong, he was no match for Hao Shuang. Hao Shuang alone was enough to defeat Duan Lingtian. Swoosh, 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 swoosh. As soon as the White Tiger King from the Zhuangzi Buddhism sect finished speaking, the people from the Zoroastrianism sect, other than Duan Lingtian, were horrified. As it turned out, the people from the Zhuangzi Buddhism sect had planned this from the beginning. Their target was only Lingtian. However, the people from the Zhuangzi Buddhism sect intended to severely injure the remaining people from the Zoroastrianism sect and teach them a painful lesson. Hao Shuang. Zifeng glared at Hao Shuang fiercely. This time, he did not try to tempt Hao Shuang. Instead, he threatened, Guardian Lingtian of our Zoroastrianism sect is under the protection of our sect leader of Zoroastrianism. For him, our sect leader of Zoroastrianism is willing to fight the supreme elder of Zhuangzi Buddhism sect. You better think this through. If you help the Zhuangzi Buddhism sect leader kidnap or kill Guardian Lingtian today, you'll definitely offend our sect leader. If our sect leader is furious, it won't be difficult for him to kill you. If the soft approach did not work, he would use the hard approach. Zifeng's attitude was unprecedentedly unyielding. Hao Shuang's expression darkened when he heard Zifeng's threat. That's right. Lung Ying chimed in. Hao Shuang, you better think this through. Back then, our sect leader's cultivation base was only at the 8th form of the Saint Celestial stage, but he was already stronger than you. Now that his cultivation base has broken through to the 9th form of the Saint Celestial stage, killing you would be as easy as killing a chicken. Unless you find a place to hide and not come out. Otherwise, once you appear and are targeted by him, you will definitely die. Lung Ying's words sounded like a warning to Hao Shuang, but the truth was, he was threatening Hao Shuang as well. Humph. At this moment, sect leader of the Zhuangzi Buddhism scoffed and said disdainfully, Guardian Zifeng, Guardian Lung Ying. Both of you might not know this, but our Supreme Elder has promised Brother Hao that he'll protect him until he breaks through to the 9th form of the Saint Celestial stage. Currently, Brother Hao's cultivation base is only a step away from breaking through to the 9th form of the Saint Celestial stage. He's confident he'll be able to break through to the 9th form of the Saint Celestial stage within 10 years. When Brother Hao breaks through to the 9th form of the Saint Celestial stage, even if he's not as fast as your sect leader of the Zoroastrianism, he'll still be able to protect himself. When sect leader of the Zhuangzi Buddhism reached the end of his sentence, a mocking smile appeared on his face. Zifeng and Leng Ying's expressions changed when they heard the Zoroastrianism's words. Hao Shuang is about to break through to the 9th form of the Saint Celestial stage. The expressions of the other people from the Zoroastrianism changed drastically as well. When they looked at Hao Shuang again, a hint of dread could be seen in their eyes. If sect leader of the Zhuangzi Buddhism was telling the truth, Hao Shuang would definitely be able to break through to the 9th form of the Saint Celestial stage. If that was the case, Hao Shuang could be considered as a quasi-powerhouse at the 9th form of the Saint Celestial stage. Humph. As long as I break through to the 9th form of the Saint Celestial stage, why would I be afraid of your sect leader of the Zoroastrianism? When sect leader of the Zhuangzi Buddhism finished speaking, Hao Shuang glanced at Zifeng and Leng Ying coldly. Perhaps I'm not as strong as him, but it won't be difficult for me to stay alive. If he dares to hurt me, as long as he doesn't kill me, I'll still be able to take revenge on your Zoroastrianism. I'd like to see if he dares to make a move on me, before he's confident he'll be able to kill me. Hao Shuang's words were loud and clear. At the same time, he exuded great confidence. However, the expressions of the people from the Zoroastrianism darkened. The atmosphere at the scene fell into a dead silence for a short period of time. Hee hee. All of a sudden, a chuckle sounded in the air and broke the silence. This voice successfully attracted the attention of everyone present. They saw the person who had chuckled was none other than Duan Lingtian. What are you laughing at? Hao Shuang asked sternly as he glared at Duan Lingtian. There was a hint of ruthlessness in his eyes. I'm not laughing at anything. Duan Lingtian calmly stopped laughing. He glanced at Hao Shuang indifferently and changed the topic. Does this mean you're the reason I'm captured or killed by the Zhuangzi Buddhism today? Hao Shuang, are you planning to make a move on me? Duan Lingtian asked two questions in succession. Why? Are you afraid? Hao Shuang sneered. Afraid? Duan Lingtian smiled. His smile was extremely brilliant. As he smiled, his robe began to flutter. A moment later, scales began to appear on his hands. Upon closer inspection, one would notice that they were dragon scales. As he spoke, Duan Lingtian's robe was torn apart by his half-dragon body. He had transformed into a human-shaped dragon monster. If one were to take a closer look, one would discover that while his hands and feet had transformed into dragon claws, there were also 9 claws on each of his hands. He was a 9-clawed dragon warrior. Based on the changes in Duan Lingtian's body, one could tell that he was under great pressure. Duan Lingtian felt an unprecedented pressure from Hao Shuang. Otherwise, he would not have transformed into a 9-clawed dragon warrior. It should be noted that he did not transform into a 9-clawed dragon warrior when he killed Xie Kongshuan, the Golden Lion King of Zhuangzi Buddhism, or defeated Leng Ying. Although transforming into a 9-clawed dragon warrior did not mean that his strength would increase tremendously, it was still much stronger than before. Since he had transformed into a 9-clawed dragon warrior, one could see how much he valued Hao Shuang. 9-clawed dragon warrior. Chapter 2204. Although the people present on the scene had heard that Duan Lingtian was a 9-clawed dragon warrior, they had not seen Duan Lingtian transforming into a 9-clawed dragon warrior with their own eyes. Now that Duan Lingtian had transformed into a 9-clawed dragon warrior, they could not help but feel shocked. This is a 9-clawed dragon warrior? Many of the fire worship sect's golden flame elders inhaled sharply as a horrified expression appeared on their faces. It's said that a 9-clawed dragon warrior's body is comparable to an 8-clawed divine dragon. His defense is extremely strong, and his explosive strength is far beyond an ordinary martial cultivator. Duan Lingtian's strength has undoubtedly increased after transforming into a 9-clawed dragon warrior. It seems like he doesn't dare to hold back when facing a powerhouse like Hao Shuang. He's going all out. However, even then, does he have a chance of winning? I don't think so. After all, Hao Shuang is the strongest person below the 9th form of the Saint Celestial stage in the Dao Martial Saint Land. Although Guardian Ling Tian has transformed into a 9-clawed dragon warrior, I don't think he's a match for Hao Shuang. I think so as well. Although the Fire Worship Sect's Golden Flame Elders and the Vice Hall Masters of the Enforcement Hall were eager for a miracle to happen, hoping that Guardian Ling Tian would be able to defeat or even kill Hao Shuang, they did not expect a miracle to happen. However, when they thought about how terrifying Hao Shuang was, they had no choice but to be realistic. It would be harder than ascending to the heavens for them to defeat Hao Shuang. The 2 vice sect leaders of Zoroastrianism and the 4 guardians of Zoroastrianism shared the same thoughts. Hao Shuang. Suddenly, Guardian Lung Ying from Zoroastrianism looked at Hao Shuang and said, "You better think this through. If you dare to touch Guardian Ling Tian today, not only will you offend Zoroastrianism, but you'll also offend the dragons." Dragons. When Lung Ying saw Duan Ling Tian had transformed into a 9-clawed dragon warrior, he immediately thought of using the dragons to threaten Hao Shuang. However, when Hao Shuang heard Lung Ying's words, he scoffed and said disdainfully, "I'm not even afraid of offending the Fire Worship Sect. Why would I be afraid of offending the dragon clan that has already fallen?" Currently, there was not a single 8-clawed divine dragon in the upper province of the Dao Martial Saint Land. It could be said that the sun had set in the west. For a rogue cultivator like Hao Shuang, he was naturally not afraid of the current dragons. Lung Ying was stunned when he heard this. On the other hand, when Zhuangzi Buddhism and the others saw Duan Ling Tian transform into a 9-clawed dragon warrior, fear appeared in their eyes when they thought of the dragons. Hao Shuang was a rogue cultivator and had no attachments. But Zhuangzi Buddhism was different. The Zhuangzi Buddhism had families and businesses. Once the dragons took revenge, they would suffer heavy losses. However, when they thought about how they had a good reason to target Duan Ling Tian, they felt relieved. They had come here to seek revenge for the Golden Lion King, Xie Kong Sun, one of the 4 great Karmapa of Zhuangzi Buddhism. So what if the dragons were here? Could they stop Zhuangzi Buddhism from seeking revenge for the Golden Lion King? Duan Ling Tian, it seems like you're really confident in your strength. Hao Shuang narrowed his eyes when he saw Duan Ling Tian had transformed into a 9-clawed dragon warrior. A hint of coldness could be seen in his eyes. Waves of killing intent rose from his body. "I'd like to see where you're getting your confidence from in front of me, Hao Shuang." As murderous intent surged from his body, Hao Shuang sneered and pushed his Saint Qi to the limit. When Sheng Yuan broke out of his body, it caused the space around him to fluctuate. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Waves of rolling airwaves set off a vast gale that wreaked havoc in all directions. At the same time, one could see Hao Shuang's body had grown bigger. Hao Shuang's skinny body swelled up in an instant, turning from a skinny young man into a muscular young man. His long white hair fluttered in the air, even though there was no wind. It looked like white pythons. His white eyebrows were raised, setting off his slightly twisted face, revealing his current mood. He was furious. He was a powerhouse at the 8th form of the Saint Celestial stage, who was ranked 5th on the Supreme Saint ranking. He was the strongest powerhouse below the 9th form of the Saint Celestial stage in the Dao Martial Saint Land. He dared to say, apart from powerhouses at the 9th form of the Saint Celestial stage, nobody in the Dao Martial Saint Land could compete with him. Yet today, not only had a little brat that wasn't even 50 years old dared to act without the slightest scruple in front of him, he'd even disregarded his strength and wanted to play a fool before him. How could he not be furious? Brother Hao is getting serious. The eyes of the sect leader of the Zhuangzi Buddhism lit up like 2 stars in the night sky when he sensed Hao Shuang's terrifying aura surging out of his body. I just hope Mr. Hao won't kill this Duan Ling Tian in a fit of anger. After all, we still have to try to pry the secret of the independent space left behind by the 3 eminent devils from the devil clans. The Violet Dragon King and the White Tiger King from the Zhuangzi Buddhism thought to themselves, Guardian Ling Tian from Zoroastrianism? The strongest prodigy in the Tao martial saint land? Today, in front of Lord Hao Shuang, he will be no different from a chicken or dog, unable to withstand a single blow. The two vice sect leaders of the Zhuangzi Buddhism were excited. They were confident in Hao Shuang. Unlike the people from the Zhuangzi Buddhism, the people from the Zoroastrianism were in low spirits. Guardian Zifeng, I'm afraid Guardian Ling Tian isn't a match for Hao Shuang. Should we help him? Protector Lung Ying looked at Protector Zifeng and said with bright eyes. Although he had some conflicts with Duan Ling Tian in the past, those were internal conflicts. However, he did not disregard Duan Ling Tian because of their past conflicts. Instead, he supported Duan Ling Tian. Naturally, this was also because the sect leader of the Zoroastrianism had supported Duan Ling Tian since the beginning. I want to help him as well. However, do you think we have a chance to help him? I'm sure if we make a move, the sect leader of the Zhuangzi Buddhism and the Karmapa of Zhuangzi Buddhism will make a move as well. Zifeng smiled bitterly as he looked at the Violet Dragon King and the White Tiger King from the Zhuangzi Buddhism warily. He was no match for either the Violet Dragon King or the White Tiger King. Currently, Ling Tian from the Zoroastrianism was being targeted by Hao Shuang. As long as the two Karmapa of Zhuangzi Buddhism made a move, they might be able to suppress the remaining four guardians. As for the others, the sect leader of the Zhuangzi Buddhism and the two vice sect leaders would be able to suppress them easily. When Lung Ying heard this, he instinctively turned to look at the people from the Zhuangzi Buddhism. However, he realized something. The sect leader of the Zhuangzi Buddhism and the two Karmapa of Zhuangzi Buddhism were paying attention to Hao Shuang and Ling Tian from the Zoroastrianism. It was as though they were watching them all the time. Immediately, Lung Ying's expression turned ugly. As for Qing Hua, Protector Hong Yun, and the other high-ranking members of the Zoroastrianism, their expressions darkened as well. Where did I get my confidence from? When Duan Ling Tian heard Hao Shuang's words and saw the saint origin in Hao Shuang's body surging, he could not help but smile indifferently. He then looked at Hao Shuang coldly. When his gaze turned cold, Duan Ling Tian's aura changed in an instant. It was as though he was a completely different person. If one were to say that he was like an elegant scholar just a moment ago, now, he was more like a bloodthirsty warrior. As his gaze turned cold, waves of monstrous battle intent rose from his body. It made him look like a god of war. Moreover, a turbulent vortex appeared out of thin air with his body as the center. Elementary devouring tactic. In a flash, Duan Ling Tian used this divine ability to devour the heaven and earth spirit energy in the surroundings, to raise the Sun Saint origin in his body to the maximum. When the Sun Saint origin spread out from his body again, the surrounding void shook. A series of crisp crackling sounds rang in the air, as though the surrounding void was shattering. Hao Shuang, let's decide the outcome of this battle with one move. What do you think? After the Sun Saint origin in Duan Ling Tian's body was raised to its limit, he felt as though his blood was boiling. He looked at Hao Shuang with a piercing gaze before he shouted, "Let's go!" Deciding the outcome of this battle with one move. As soon as Duan Ling Tian finished speaking, the entire place fell silent again. Hao Shuang was stunned. The people from the Zhuangzi Buddhism group were stunned. The people from the Zoroastrianism group were stunned as well. After a while, Hao Shuang was the first to regain his senses. After he regained his senses, he could not help but sneer. I really don't know where you get your courage from. How dare you say that we'll decide the outcome of this battle with one move? What? You don't dare? Duan Ling Tian narrowed his eyes as a mocking smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. I don't dare? When Hao Shuang heard Duan Ling Tian's words, he was stunned at first. Then, he could not help but burst out laughing. After a while, he stopped laughing and looked at Duan Ling Tian disdainfully. What a joke. Why wouldn't I dare? Since you're in a hurry to die, I'll fulfill your wish. As soon as his voice fell, the Saint Qi around Hao Shuang's body swelled, as he also displayed one of his assist-type divine abilities, pushing his Saint Qi to the limit. Naturally, the boost from his assist-type divine ability was not as great as the boost from Duan Ling Tian's Saint origin. Although his improvement was not as good as Duan Ling Tian, His foundation was far better than Duan Ling Tian. After all, he was a powerhouse at the 8th form of the Saint Celestial stage. He was only a step away from breaking through to the 9th form of the Saint Celestial stage. To a certain extent, he could be considered a quasi-powerhouse at the 9th form of the Saint Celestial stage. Now that he had cast his assist-type divine ability, his saint origin had been raised to the level of a powerhouse at the 9th form of the Saint Celestial stage. Whoosh! At the same time, Hao Shuang raised his hand, and a 6-foot-long rod appeared in his hand. Initially, there was nothing special about the long rod. However, as Hao Shuang poured his saint chi into it, it seemed to come to life in an instant and began exuding a terrifying aura. This is the Dharma rod. Chapter 2205. The 6-foot-long staff in Hao Shuang's hand was engraved with obscure patterns. From afar, it gave off a simple and unadorned feeling. Up close, it gave off an ancient feeling. However, as Hao Shuang's saint origin flowed into the 6-foot-long staff, voila! In just an instant, the patterns on the rod seemed to have come to life in an instant, blooming with a golden light that set off the rod, as if it had turned into a scorching sun, dazzling and dazzling. A vast and majestic aura swept out from the 6-feet-long rod that was covered in a golden glow, causing most of the people present to feel their hearts palpitate. This is the Dharma staff. When Zifeng from the fire worship sect cried out in surprise, everyone regained their senses. All of them turned to look at the 6-foot-long rod in Hao Shuang's hand that was glowing with a golden light. For a moment, the 6-foot-long staff in Hao Shuang's hand became the focus of everyone's attention. Dharma staff? Why does it sound so familiar? A golden flame elder of Zoroastrianism frowned and fell into deep thought. However, as soon as he fell into deep thought, he was interrupted by another golden flame elder from the fire worship sect. Isn't the Dharma rod one of the 10 great saint weapons on the 10 great saint weapons ranking? Moreover, it's an offensive and defensive super saint weapon. Although the Dharma staff is not as offensive as the super saint weapon, the traceless sword, it's far more powerful than an ordinary 1,000 inscription saint weapon. Moreover, it can be used for defense. Its defense is extremely strong. I didn't expect the Dharma staff to be in Hao Shuang's hands. It's over. It's over. Protector Ling Tian doesn't have much chance of winning. Now that Hao Shuang has taken out the super saint weapon, the Dharma staff, there's no doubt about the outcome of this battle. One move to determine the outcome? I really don't know where Protector Ling Tian gets his confidence from. Now that Hao Shuang has taken out the Dharma staff, even if he uses all his strength, I'm afraid he won't be able to block Hao Shuang's attack, right? Since it's one move to determine the outcome, Hao Shuang won't hold back. Protector Ling Tian's life will be in danger if he attacks with the staff. The group of Zoroastrianism Golden Flame Elders and the Vice Hall Masters of the Law Enforcement Hall shook their heads. They all thought that Duan Ling Tian was dead meat. It wasn't that they were trying to boost the morale of others and diminish the morale of their own people. It was just that they couldn't see any hope and could only accept their fate. One move to determine the outcome? The other 4 guardians of the Zoroastrianism and the 2 vice-sect leaders of the Zoroastrianism also smiled bitterly when they regained their senses. In the depths of their eyes, there was a deep sense of helplessness. A sense of helplessness rose in their hearts. Just now, when Duan Ling Tian said that he was going to fight Hao Shuang with one move, they were also shocked. If it was a normal fight, Hao Shuang might not have taken Duan Ling Tian's life directly. But if it was a battle to determine the outcome of the battle, Hao Shuang would definitely not hold back in order to play it safe. At that time, Duan Ling Tian would most likely die. Initially, they thought Duan Ling Tian would be doomed if he really decided the outcome with a single move. Only a few people could not help but have a trace of desire in their hearts when they saw how confident Duan Ling Tian was. They longed to see a miracle happen. However, when Hao Shuang took out the super saint weapon, the Dharma rod, the desire in these people's hearts was mercilessly crushed. Hao Shuang was the strongest person below the 9th form of the Saint Celestial stage in the Tao Martial Saint land. If there were no powerhouses at the ninth form of the Saint Celestial stage, nobody would be a match for him. Now he had taken out the Super Saint weapon, the Dharma Rod. At this moment, only despair remained in the hearts of the people from the Zoroastrianism. Unlike the people from the Zoroastrianism, the people from the Zhuangzi Buddhism were shocked when they saw Hao Shuang taking out the Super Saint weapon, the Dharma Rod. Lord Hao Shuang is going to use the Super Saint weapon in the battle with Duan Lingtian? The two vice sect leaders of the Zhuangzi Buddhism were dumbfounded. Brother Hao, don't you think you're exaggerating? Is there a need to use the Super Saint weapon in the battle with Duan Lingtian? I want to capture him temporarily and take him away to interrogate him about the secrets of the independent space left behind by the three eminent devils. The vice sect leader of the Zhuangzi Buddhism was shocked when he saw the Super Saint weapon, the Dharma Rod, in Hao Shuang's hand. He did not want Hao Shuang to kill Duan Lingtian if it was not necessary. Mr. Hao Shuang. At this moment, the Azure Dragon King and the White Tiger King of the Zhuangzi Buddhism also sent Hao Shuang voice transmissions. They were worried Hao Shuang would kill Duan Lingtian with just one move. You don't have to worry about that. Hao Shuang replied in a timely manner. Since it's decided in one move, Duan Lingtian will definitely use his full strength and concentrate all his strength into one attack. I'll use all my strength to defeat his attack. However, after defeating his attack, I'll stop in time and spare his life. After all, if I can pry the secret of the independent space left behind by the three eminent celestials out of him, it'll only be beneficial to me. Hao Shuang's words calmed the vice sect leader of the Zhuangzi Buddhism, the Azure Dragon King, and the White Tiger King. Dharma Rod? A Super Saint weapon? Duan Lingtian frowned slightly when he saw Hao Shuang taking out a Super Saint weapon. This was slightly beyond his expectations. He had heard of the Dharma Rod before, and knew it was an offensive and defensive Super Saint weapon. In terms of offense, although it was not the best among the 10 Super Saint weapons on the 10 Great Saint weapons ranking, it was still much stronger than a Super Saint weapon like the Devil Seal Tablet and 1,000 Inscriptions Saint weapon. Haha! Hao Shuang saw Duan Lingtian's frown and smiled smugly. Duan Lingtian, are you surprised I have a Super Saint weapon as well? Moreover, it's even more useful than your Devil Seal Tablet. I'm a little surprised. At this moment, Duan Lingtian's expression had returned to normal. However, the Sun Saint origin in his body continued to surge. If I, Hao Shuang, were a devil cultivator, Duan Lingtian would have a chance to kill me with the Devil Seal Tablet. Unfortunately, I'm not a devil cultivator. Hao Shuang smiled smugly. His words were filled with sarcasm. The Devil Seal Tablet was effective against devil cultivators, but it was useless against Hao Shuang. You talk too much. Duan Lingtian frowned when he heard Hao Shuang's sarcastic words. Then he said bluntly, after 3 breaths, we'll decide the victor with one move. As you wish. Hao Shuang's eyes turned cold when he heard Duan Lingtian's words. Saint origin surged from his body as the Dharma Rod in his hand shone brightly. He was preparing to launch his strongest attack after 3 breaths. On the other hand, with a raise of Duan Lingtian's hand, a plain and simple sword appeared in his hand. This sword was none other than the Celestial Supreme Treasure, the Jasper Celestial Sword. Jasper Celestial Sword. In the past, when I used you to defeat my enemies, I had to be secretive about it. As the Sun Saint origin in his body surged out and entered the Jasper Celestial Sword, Duan Lingtian looked at the Jasper Celestial Sword and muttered to himself, "Today, I'll show everyone the brilliance of your Celestial Supreme Treasure. I'll show them that Super Saint weapons are nothing in front of a Celestial Supreme Treasure like you." When Duan Lingtian reached the end of his sentence, his eyes flashed brilliantly. This beam of light seemed to be able to overshadow everything around it, and it was clearly seen by everyone present. After listening to Duan Lingtian's words, he no longer planned to use the Celestial Supreme Treasure, the Jasper Celestial Sword. Naturally, he did not conceal it because he did not want to waste his Sun Saint origin elsewhere. After all, his opponent was Hao Shuang, the strongest person below the ninth form of the Saint Celestial stage in the Tao martial saint land. Moreover, Hao Shuang had a super saint weapon, the Dharma Rod. If he made a mistake, he would definitely die. For this reason, he had to pour all his Sun Saint origin into the Celestial Supreme Treasure, the Jasper Celestial Sword, to unleash his most powerful sword attack. This sword strike was related to his life and everything about him. He had to be cautious. He did not have the time to think about the consequences of exposing the Jasper Celestial Sword. At this moment, he only wanted to unleash his most powerful sword attack to fight with Hao Shuang. They wanted to see if his most powerful sword attack was stronger than Hao Shuang, who was the strongest person below the ninth form of the Saint Celestial stage in the Tao martial saint land. When Duan Lingtian first took out the Jasper Celestial Supreme Treasure, the Celestial Supreme Treasure, in his hand, its simple appearance did not attract any attention. Whoosh! However, when the Sun Saint origin in his body surged into the Jasper Celestial Sword, the simple Jasper Celestial Sword shone brightly. Initially, it was a golden light that was similar to the color of the Sun Saint origin. However, it soon turned red. Soon after, various colors of light flashed. In the end, the multicolored lights merged into one and transformed into a condensed and dusky energy that twirled around the Jasper Celestial Sword. Among them, tiny bolts of gray lightning were pulsating rhythmically, like tiny gray snakes slithering around the Jasper Celestial Sword. At the same time, a sharp and destructive aura swept out from the Jasper Celestial Sword in Duan Lingtian's hand. Many people present on the scene felt chills running up their spines. Their hearts skipped a beat as they narrowed their eyes. Before they had the time to react, 3 breaths of time had already quietly passed. When the time was up, Hao Shuang let out a thunderous roar that was deafening to the ears. Bang! The air trembled as Hao Shuang used the force to fly toward Duan Lingtian. Chapter 2206. In fact, Hao Shuang had also noticed the destructive aura surging out of Duan Lingtian's Jasper Celestial Sword. However, he did not have the time to feel how terrifying the aura was. This was because the 3 breaths were up. As for his power, it was already fully charged. It was time to make his move. Boom! Rumble! A series of thunderous noises reverberated in the air. Hao Shuang wielded the Super Saint weapon, the Dharma Rod, as he charged forward. In just a blink of an eye, he had covered more than half of the distance between him and Duan Lingtian. Suddenly he came to a halt. Roar! Hao Shuang let out a beast-like roar as the saint origin in his body skyrocketed. His entire body began to swell strangely. In just a blink of an eye, he had transformed into a 3-meter-tall giant. Hao Shuang, who had transformed into a 3-meter-tall giant, looked like a King Kong. His muscles bulged, and most of his robe was torn apart. His head of snow-white hair stood on end, like sharp needles shooting into the sky. At the same time, the golden glow on the Dharma Rod in Hao Shuang's hand grew even brighter. In just a blink of an eye, it seemed to have transformed into a sky-propping pillar that exuded a terrifying aura. The rolling energy in it seemed to be earth-shattering. In an instant, the void around Hao Shuang trembled. The air seemed to have frozen at this moment. The energy in Hao Shuang's body and the Dharma Rod's energy caused a clear and ear-piercing sound of friction to appear in the air. Duan Lingtian, take this! Hao Shuang, who seemed to have transformed into a King Kong, suddenly roared and took a step forward. When his foot landed, it was as if a huge mountain had collapsed. When his foot landed, ripples appeared in the void and rapidly spread out in all directions. It was as if a huge rock had been smashed into a calm lake without any warning, causing waves of ripples to appear. At the same time, the 3-meter-tall Hao Shuang's Saint Qi skyrocketed. It was as if he had transformed into a deity. He suddenly raised the Dharma Rod, the Super Saint weapon in his hand, and smashed it at the purple figure standing in the void in front of him. The purple figure was none other than Duan Lingtian. Boom! Rumble! Hao Shuang's cudgel strike not only contained a powerful offensive divine ability, but also the profundity of the cudgel martial arts. It looked simple, as if it was just a casual wave. But in reality, it was an attack that he had unleashed with all his might. Hao Shuang's attack not only contained his full strength, but it also contained the full power of the Super Saint weapon, the Dharma Rod. As soon as it was thrown out, it was earth-shattering. Wherever the Super Saint weapon, the Devil Rod, passed, the void would tremble. It was like a thin piece of paper being baptized by the wind, as if it could be torn apart at any time. The rod that seemed to be able to shatter the heavens was accompanied by waves of terrifying destructive aura, as it smashed toward Duanling Tian. At this moment, the staff that descended from the sky gave Duanling Tian a feeling as though Mount Tai was pressing down on him. It was as though he would be mercilessly smashed into a meat patty if he was slightly careless. Boom, 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 boom. Like a bolt of lightning descending, the rod strike that shook the heavens tore through the sky and descended towards Duanling Tian, and it gave rise to waves of explosive sounds that were like exploding thunder as it approached menacingly. And at this most critical moment, in a flash of lightning, Duanling Tian finally made his move. Sword-wielding art. Faced with Hao Shuang's attack, Duanling Tian's celestial supreme treasure, the Jasper Celestial Sword, finally flew out of his hand after devouring Hao Shuang's Sun Saint origin. Swoosh! A short-lived sword cry rang in the air as a sword ray flashed in the air. At this moment, Duanling Tian felt as though his body had been emptied. He was on the verge of collapsing. After recovering a little bit of his saint origin, he barely managed to stabilize himself. However, his face turned pale in just a blink of an eye. At this moment, no one was paying attention to Duanling Tian. Most of the people present on the scene were looking at the Dharma Rod in Hao Shuang's hand that was descending like a thunderbolt. This was the only thing they could do. This was because they could not catch a trace of the extraordinary-looking sword that had left Duanling Tian's hand. It was as though the sword had vanished into thin air, leaving behind only a short-lived sword cry by their ears. How fast? Only a few powerhouses at the 8th form of the Saint Celestial stage, such as Zifeng from the Zoroastrianism, the Azure Dragon King, and the White Tiger King from the Zhuangzi Buddhism, managed to catch a glimpse of the sword ray. At this moment, although they barely managed to catch a glimpse of the sword light, they did not have the time to express their shock and astonishment. This was because everything happened in a split second. How's this possible? When the Jasper Celestial Sword flew out of Duanling Tian's hand, it transformed into a sword ray that appeared in front of Hao Shuang's eyes. Horror and disbelief could be seen in his eyes. The reason he reacted this way was because the Jasper Celestial Sword was too fast. It was ridiculously fast. That speed was much faster than the speed at which he was attacking at the moment. If the saint origin in his body was close to the saint origin of a powerhouse at the 9th form of the Saint Celestial stage, however, the speed of the sword ray before his eyes was close to the speed of a powerhouse at the 9th form of the Saint Celestial stage. In fact, it was almost as fast as a powerhouse who had just broken through to the 9th form of the Saint Celestial stage and had not stabilized his cultivation base. It all depends on this sword ray to see if I can escape this calamity. Duanling Tian sighed inwardly when he saw the Jasper Celestial Sword flying out of his hand. He had used all his strength in this sword ray. This was his strongest sword ray. Swoosh! The Jasper Celestial Sword that had absorbed Duanling Tian's Sun Saint origin flew out of Duanling Tian's hand like a wild horse that had escaped from its reins. His speed was so fast that it was almost shocking. In just a blink of an eye, the Jasper Celestial Sword was already close to the Super Saint weapon, the Dharma Rod, that Hao Shuang was holding. After a fleeting sword light flashed, it continued to attack the Dharma Rod in a menacing manner. Swoosh! The Jasper Celestial Sword seemed to have merged with the void. It did not disturb the void at all. In fact, this was because the Jasper Celestial Sword was too fast. It was so fast that the void did not have time to react. Chi, 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 chi. Along with a series of clear and soft noises, the sword gleam on the tip of the Jasper Celestial Sword collided with the golden gleam that was wreaking havoc around the Dharma Rod and began to fight. And this initial confrontation was also the final calm before the storm. The sword ray from the Jasper Celestial Sword did not seem to be obstructed at all. It easily penetrated the golden ray from the Dharma rod and landed on the Dharma rod. Suddenly clang, rip, an earth-shattering sound of metal colliding reverberated in the air, followed by the sound of something being torn apart. When the Jasper celestial sword landed on the Dharma rod, it unleashed a destructive force that seemed to be able to destroy the world. When the Dharma rod was sent flying, it also tore off Hao Shuang's arm that was holding the Dharma rod, leaving a bloody wound on Hao Shuang's shoulder. It was a ghastly sight. Whoosh! After the Dharma rod and the arm that held it left Hao Shuang's body, it shot off into the distance like an arrow. Its speed was so fast that it appeared in front of everyone's eyes for a fleeting moment. It was not much slower than the speed of the Jasper celestial sword. The Jasper celestial sword unleashed a destructive force that knocked away the Dharma rod and tore Hao Shuang's arm off, severely injuring Hao Shuang. All of this happened in a blink of an eye. After that, the Jasper celestial sword slowed down a little. However, it continued to fly toward Hao Shuang like a bolt of lightning. This time, the Jasper celestial sword's target was between Hao Shuang's eyebrows. It looked as though it would only stop after Hao Shuang was dead. When Hao Shuang's arm was torn off, he felt as though a bucket of cold water had been poured on him. He shuddered and regained his senses. *T. When Hao Shuang saw the sword ray that appeared for a brief moment and locked onto his eyebrows, it seemed as though it would not stop until he was dead. His expression changed again and again. Then he instinctively screamed in fear. In the next moment, before the Jasper celestial sword could pierce through Hao Shuang's eyebrows, whoosh! At the same time, a humanoid silhouette emerged from Hao Shuang's body. It was a shrunken version of Hao Shuang. As soon as the shrunken Hao Shuang appeared, he fled into the distance at an unbelievable speed. He left behind a few words as he fled. He said, "Zhuangzi Buddhism, Zoroastrianism. I, Hao Shuang, will remember this grudge." As soon as the words left his mouth, the shrunken Hao Shuang's silhouette disappeared without a trace. Spurt. At the same time, the Jasper celestial sword pierced through Hao Shuang's eyebrows, causing blood to splatter everywhere. Soul detachment? Although it seemed as though the Jasper celestial sword had killed Hao Shuang, Duan Lingtian knew that Hao Shuang's soul had escaped from Hao Shuang's body. Before the Jasper celestial sword killed Hao Shuang's soul had escaped from his body and disappeared into the distance at an extremely fast speed. The Jasper celestial sword had only killed Hao Shuang's soulless body. The eighth form of the Saint Celestial stage was also known as the soul detachment form. At this stage, as long as a powerhouse at the eighth form of the Saint Celestial stage, or above wanted to, they could detach their soul from their body at any time. Chapter 2207. Unfortunately, my son Saint Origin is almost depleted, so I can't chase after Hao Shuang's soul. Moreover, my soul is only at the sixth form of the Saint Celestial stage, so I can't use my soul attack to chase after Hao Shuang's soul. Duan Lingtian sighed inwardly when he saw Hao Shuang's soul escaping. It was not that he did not want to kill Hao Shuang, but there was nothing he could do. After Hao Shuang used the soul detaching technique that was unique to powerhouses at or above the eighth form of the Saint Celestial stage, his soul's speed was comparable to an ordinary powerhouse at the eighth form of the Saint Celestial stage. However, based on Hao Shuang's words before he escaped, it seems like he hates Zhuangzi Buddhism as well. Duan Lingtian's expression turned strange when he recalled Hao Shuang's words. Based on his tone, it seems like he hates Zhuangzi Buddhism more than Zoroastrianism. Duan Lingtian could understand why Hao Shuang was acting this way. After all, Hao Shuang was here because he had accepted Zhuangzi Buddhism's invitation. However, Hao Shuang had lost his body because of Zhuangzi Buddhism's invitation. His soul had left his body and was forced to flee. Now that his body was dead, his soul could no longer possess it. He could only steal another person's body or reconstruct his own. Compared to stealing another person's body, it was better to reconstruct his own body, since that was the only way he could regain his strength. Naturally, it would take a long time to reconstruct his own body. In any case, Hao Shuang had accepted Zhuangzi Buddhism's offer to help, but he ended up going for wool and coming home shorn. This was something he did not expect even in his wildest dreams. Hao Shuang must hate Zhuangzi Buddhism to the core. He must hate Zhuangzi Buddhism for inviting him to help before he figured out my strength. Otherwise, he wouldn't have ended up in such a miserable state. Putting himself in Hao Shuang's shoes, Duan Lingtian could understand Hao Shuang's feelings. If Hao Shuang had known that he had such strength, he would not have appeared here, even if Zhuangzi Buddhism had given him so many benefits. However, even I didn't expect that the Celestial Supreme Treasure, the Jasper Celestial Sword, would be able to unleash such a powerful attack when I infused it with my Sun Saint origin that was enhanced by the elementary devouring tactic. When Duan Lingtian recalled how the Jasper Celestial Sword easily destroyed Hao Shuang's attack and knocked away the super sacred artifact, the Dharma Rod, he could not help but feel slightly shocked. One had to know that even before he made his move, he wasn't sure what the outcome would be. After all, Hao Shuang was the strongest person below the 9th form of the Saint Celestial stage in the Tao Martial Saint land. Moreover, he possessed the Dharma Rod, the super saint weapon. If he unleashed his full strength, he would be invincible among those below the 9th form of the Saint Celestial stage. For this reason, Duan Lingtian did not hesitate to reveal his Celestial Supreme Treasure, the Jasper Celestial Sword, in front of everyone. He was not certain if his attack would be able to match Hao Shuang's full strength. At that time he felt slightly anxious. When the results came out, he was shocked, but at the same time, he knew that he had been overthinking things. If he was not there, Hao Shuang's attack would be considered invincible among those below the 9th form of the Saint Celestial stage. However, compared to his attack, even Hao Shuang's full strength would pale in comparison. Actually, the power contained in my attack was not much different from the power contained in his attack. However, at that level of power, the difference of a hair's breadth is like 1,000 miles. That's why he was defeated so miserably. When Duan Lingtian thought about this, he could not help but feel relieved. If I didn't inject all my Sun Saint origin into the Jasper Celestial Sword, and used a portion of my Sun Saint origin to cast the Universe Ruler's divine ability, the Universe Teleportation, or to form the 10,000 Swords territory, to conceal the Jasper Celestial Sword's attack, the Jasper Celestial Sword's attack might not be comparable to Hao Shuang's full-strength attack. If that's the case, the outcome would have been reversed. I would have been the one who was defeated or killed. When Duan Lingtian thought about this, he broke out in cold sweat. He suddenly felt it was a wise decision to risk exposing his Celestial Supreme Treasure, the Jasper Celestial Sword, to fight with Hao Shuang. 09 Little Say Net. Even if he had to expose the Jasper Celestial Sword, it was worth it. After all, he had saved his life. Thoughts flashed through Duan Lingtian's mind as he thought of one idea after another. The people present on the scene finally regained their senses. Everyone present on the scene was shocked by what they had seen. Many people even wondered if they were dreaming. There were even some who couldn't help but pinch their own thighs and slap themselves to make sure that they weren't dreaming. One moved to determine the outcome. This was what Duan Lingtian, the guardian of Zoroastrianism, had suggested to Hao Shuang, the sectless cultivator who was ranked 5th on the Supreme Saint ranking. Hao Shuang was widely acknowledged as the strongest person below the 9th form of the Saint Celestial stage in the Tao Martial Saint land. Moreover, he possessed the Dharma Rod, the super saint weapon. If he unleashed his full strength, it would definitely be the strongest attack below the 9th form of the Saint Celestial stage. This was what everyone present on the scene thought as well. When Hao Shuang made his move, they were certain Duan Lingtian would either be killed or severely injured. However, the outcome was like a joke to them. At the most critical moment, Duan Lingtian had used his sword-wielding technique and bestowed it with a destructive force. Not only did he send Hao Shuang's super saint weapon, the Dharma Rod, flying, but he had also killed Hao Shuang's body. In the end, Hao Shuang was forced to use the soul-detaching technique that was unique to powerhouses at or above the 8th form of the Saint Celestial stage, to abandon his body and escape. At that time, everyone was shocked. Although Hao Shuang had left behind a threat before he escaped, it did not bring them back to their senses. This was because this was the strongest shock they had ever experienced in their lives. The most inconceivable shock. The most unbelievable shock. When everyone regained their senses, they turned to look at Duan Lingtian in unison. Their eyes and faces were filled with shock and disbelief. Duan Lingtian finally spoke. Everyone from the Zhuangzi Buddhism sect. Duan Lingtian looked at the people from the Zhuangzi Buddhism sect and said calmly, "Since the devil clans from the land of exile could invade the upper province at any time, I didn't want to see the humans lose any more powerhouses. That's why I only destroyed Hao Shuang's body to teach him a lesson. I didn't destroy his soul. I don't think any of you have any objections to this, right?" After all, when he left, it seemed like he hated the Zhuangzi Buddhism sect very much. After he recovers, I'm sure he'll seek revenge on the Zhuangzi Buddhism sect. A hint of mockery could be seen in Duan Lingtian's eyes when he spoke. The faces of the people from the Zhuangzi Buddhism sect turned pale when they heard Duan Lingtian's words. This was especially so for the sect leader of the Zhuangzi Buddhism sect and the two kings of the Zhuangzi Buddhism sect. They were puzzled why Duan Lingtian did not seize the opportunity to destroy Hao Shuang's soul. After all, with the strength that Duan Lingtian had displayed previously, it would not be difficult for him to destroy Hao Shuang's soul if he made another move. However, when they heard Duan Lingtian's words, they were stunned. At this moment, they realized Duan Lingtian had done this on purpose. He did not destroy Hao Shuang's soul on purpose, so that Hao Shuang could seek revenge on the Zhuangzi Buddhism sect after he recovered. Duan Lingtian wanted to kill Hao Shuang with a borrowed knife. They did not believe Duan Lingtian when he said that he had held back because the devil clan was about to invade the upper province. Why did he kill one of the four kings of the Zhuangzi Buddhism sect, the Golden Lion King, Xiekong Sun, if he did not want the humans to lose any more powerhouses because the devil clan was about to invade the upper province? Guardian Lingtian, this is... The people from the Zoroastrianism sect could not help but smile when they heard Duan Lingtian's words to the people from the Zhuangzi Buddhism sect. Their understanding of Duan Lingtian was similar to that of the people from the Zhuangzi Buddhism sect. They felt that Duan Lingtian did not kill Hao Shuang on purpose, so that Hao Shuang could seek revenge on the Zhuangzi Buddhism sect in the future. However, judging from Hao Shuang's shout when he left, he was not only targeting Zhuangzi Buddhism, but also Zoroastrianism. The two deputy sect leaders of Zoroastrianism furrowed their brows in dissatisfaction. Guardian Lingtian's decision is inappropriate. If Hao Shuang makes a comeback in the future, I'm afraid he won't only target Zhuangzi Buddhism, but also Zoroastrianism. However, even though they were unhappy that Duan Lingtian had intentionally let Hao Shuang go, they did not dare to say anything. They all knew in their hearts. After today's battle, Guardian Lingtian from the Zoroastrianism would definitely become famous in the Tao Martial Saint land. Moreover, he would replace Hao Shuang and become the strongest person below the 9th form of the Saint Celestial stage in the Tao Martial Saint land. How could they question the actions of such an existence? After today, even the sect leader of Zoroastrianism would treat Lingtian differently, let alone them. However, whether it was the people from the Zhuangzi Buddhism sect or the people from the Zoroastrianism sect, they were unaware that this was not the truth. The reason Duan Lingtian did not chase after Hao Shuang's soul was because he wanted to seize the opportunity to kill Hao Shuang. It was not because he was worried that the devil clans would invade the upper province, and he did not want the humans to lose any more powerhouses. It was not because he wanted to spare Hao Shuang's life, so that Hao Shuang could seek revenge on Zhuangzi Buddhism sect in the future. It was because Duan Lingtian was at his limit. Right now, he was like an arrow at the end of its flight. He no longer had the strength to chase after Hao Shuang's soul and kill him. Chapter 2208. Naturally, it was not difficult for Duan Lingtian to guess what Zhuangzi Buddhism and the others were thinking. This was precisely his objective. He wanted to make Zhuangzi Buddhism and the others think that he did not kill Hao Shuang on purpose, so that Hao Shuang could escape with his soul detachment technique. He did not want to expose the fact that he was an arrow at the end of its flight. After all, if this matter was exposed, Zhuangzi Buddhism and the others would act recklessly. At that time, the Zoroastrianism group would not be able to protect him. He would only be taken away by Zhuangzi Buddhism and the others. This was not something he wanted to see. Whoosh! At some point, the celestial supreme treasure, the Jasper celestial sword, had returned to Duan Lingtian's hand. At this moment, Duan Lingtian had exhausted most of the Sun Saint origin that he had infused into the Jasper celestial sword. Due to this reason, he no longer had the strength to chase after Hao Shuang's soul. Whoosh! 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 However, even though there was only a tiny bit of energy left in the Jasper celestial sword, it was still emitting a murky sword chi that was filled with a destructive aura. It was as though it could incinerate everything. Duan Lingtian looked at Duan Lingtian, who was standing with the sword in his hand. He could feel the destructive aura emanating from the sword in Duan Lingtian's hand. Duan Lingtian, don't you dare do anything rash. The sect leader of Zhuangzi Buddhism's expression changed drastically when he heard Duan Lingtian's words. If you dare to make a move on us, the Supreme Elder of Zhuangzi Buddhism will personally take revenge on Zoroastrianism in the future. You better think carefully before you act. Sect leader of Zhuangzi Buddhism used the Supreme Elder of Zhuangzi Buddhism, Lang Qianjin, to threaten Duan Lingtian. He wanted to intimidate Duan Lingtian. Although the Azure Dragon King and the White Tiger King from Zhuangzi Buddhism did not say anything, their eyes were filled with fear as they looked at Duan Lingtian. Their eyes were filled with fear when they looked at the sword in Duan Lingtian's hand. It was obvious to them. The reason Duan Lingtian's attack was so powerful was because of the sword. This sword gave them a feeling that it was even more terrifying than a super saint weapon. They were certain that the sword Saint Origin, this sword was a sword Saint weapon, was more terrifying than any of the super saint weapons on the 10 great saint rankings. Perhaps it was not a sword Saint weapon. Duan Lingtian managed to survive in the independent space left behind by the 3 eminent devils. Not only that, but his strength has also improved tremendously. He must have obtained this sword from there. This sword is most likely from the land of exile. It's a demonic sword that's even more terrifying than a super saint weapon that was forged by a demonic overlord. In the end, it was brought to the Dao Martial Saint land by the 3 devil cultivators and was obtained by Duan Lingtian. Apart from the 2 Karmapa of Zhuangzi Buddhism, the sect leader of Zhuangzi Buddhism and the vice-sect leaders of Zhuangzi Buddhism shared the same thoughts. Even the people from Zoroastrianism shared the same thoughts. The sword in their guardian Lingtian's hand gave them a feeling, and the power it displayed had completely surpassed the super saint weapon that they knew. Even the 9-cloud sword and the traceless sword, 2 of the super saint weapons on the 10 great saint weapons ranking, were not as powerful as this sword. What if I don't plan to do so? Duan Lingtian narrowed his eyes when he heard the threat from the sect leader of Zhuangzi Buddhism. His eyes flashed coldly as killing intent rose from his body. The Jasper celestial sword emitted a destructive aura, causing the expressions of Zhuangzi Buddhism and the others to change drastically. They did not expect Duan Lingtian, the guardian of Zoroastrianism, to be so unpredictable. He was still filled with killing intent, even after their sect leader had threatened him with the Supreme Elder. Guardian Lingtian. The 2 vice-sect leaders of Zoroastrianism cried out anxiously. They were worried Guardian Lingtian would kill all the people from Zoroastrianism in a fit of rage. They could tell from how Duan Lingtian managed to kill Hao Shuang's body with a single strike and forced Hao Shuang to abandon his body and soul to escape. They could tell Guardian Lingtian was strong enough to kill all the people from Zhuangzi Buddhism. Even the 4 guardians of Zoroastrianism could not help but send a voice transmission to Duan Lingtian. Guardian Lingtian, I know you're furious. However, you can't kill these people from Zhuangzi Buddhism. If you kill them, you'll infuriate the Supreme Elder of Zhuangzi Buddhism. He won't hesitate to invade our Zoroastrianism. Guardian Lingtian, the Supreme Elder of Zhuangzi Buddhism, is a powerhouse at the 9th form of the Saint Celestial stage. If he invades our Zoroastrianism, The people from Zoroastrianism will be wiped out. Although Lord Sect Leader is strong, it's impossible for him to protect everyone from Zoroastrianism. That's right, Guardian Ling Tian. At that time, even you would be in danger. Duan Ling Tian almost burst out laughing when he heard the 4 guardians of Zoroastrianism trying to dissuade him. At the same time, he was secretly impressed by his acting skills. With my acting skills, if I was in the entertainment industry on Earth in my previous life, it wouldn't be a problem for me to win the Best Actor award. Duan Ling Tian looked at the people from Zhuangzi Buddhism coldly and said in a cold voice, I won't kill all of you today. However, you'll have to pay for what you've done today. I'm not asking for much. Sect leader Duan Ling Tian of Zhuangzi Buddhism, destroy one of your arms. After that, all of you can scram. Duan Ling Tian's voice became colder and colder as he spoke. It felt as though winter had arrived. Sect leader Duan Ling Tian of Zhuangzi Buddhism's expression changed drastically when he heard Duan Ling Tian's words. RIP. However, he was still a sect leader after all. For the sake of the bigger picture, he decisively extended his right hand and tore his left arm off before destroying it. From then on, it was impossible for him to reattach his left arm. Sect leader, the Violet Dragon King, and the White Tiger King's expressions changed drastically. Although they were furious and humiliated, they did not have the courage to make a move in front of Duan Ling Tian. The scene of Duan Ling Tian defeating Hao Shuang with a single strike was still vivid in their minds. Such a powerhouse was not someone they could afford to offend. Lord Sect Leader, the 2 vice sect leaders of Zhuangzi Buddhism cried out in grief. They felt extremely humiliated, but they did not dare to make a move. Guardian Ling Tian, are you satisfied now? Sect leader Duan Ling Tian of Zhuangzi Buddhism asked in a deep voice as he looked at Duan Ling Tian with a ferocious expression. His eyes were filled with rage. Scram! Hurry up! I don't want to regret this. Duan Ling Tian frowned impatiently and waved his hand reluctantly. Zhuangzi Buddhism and the others felt as though a heavy burden had been lifted from their shoulders. They turned around and left. The 2 great Karmapa of Zhuangzi Buddhism even brought along 1 vice sect leader each to ensure they could leave this place as soon as possible. They were worried Duan Ling Tian would regret his decision. In just a blink of an eye, Zhuangzi Buddhism and the others had disappeared from their sight. The high-ranking officials of Zhuangzi Buddhism sighed in relief when they saw this. They were worried Ling Tian, the leader of Zoroastrianism, would kill Zhuangzi Buddhism and the others in a fit of rage. Guardian Ling Tian, although I knew you're stronger than me, I didn't expect you to be so much stronger than me. Hao Shuang is ranked 5th on the Supreme Saint ranking, and he's widely acknowledged as the strongest person below the 9th form of the Saint Celestial stage. However, he couldn't even withstand a single strike from you. Zifeng exclaimed as he looked at Duan Ling Tian. Guardian Ling Tian, you're really good at hiding your strength. Qinghua smiled bitterly as he looked at Duan Ling Tian. He was so embarrassed that he wanted to dig a hole in the ground and hide in it when he recalled how he wanted to take Duan Ling Tian as his disciple. Guardian Ling Tian, I Leng Ying, rarely submit to anyone. Even if that person is stronger than me, I'll submit to you from today onward. Leng Ying had a respectful expression on his face when he looked at Duan Ling Tian again. When the new Supreme Saint ranking is released, Guardian Ling Tian will replace Hao Shuang and be ranked 5th on the Supreme Saint ranking. Moreover, he'll be widely acknowledged as the strongest person below the 9th form of the Saint Celestial stage. The moment Hong Yun's words left her mouth, the remaining high-ranking officials of Zoroastrianism looked at Duan Ling Tian respectfully. Even the sanctum leaders of White Tiger Sanctum and Azure Dragon Sanctum, who had conflicts with Duan Ling Tian in the past, were filled with respect when they looked at Duan Ling Tian. The strength that Duan Ling Tian had displayed had completely shocked them. Ranked 5th on the Supreme Saint ranking? The strongest person below the 9th form of the Saint Celestial stage? Although Duan Ling Tian was calm, he could not help but feel excited when he heard Hong Yun's words. Guardian Ling Tian, your sword. Zifeng could not help but ask when the 4 guardians of Zoroastrianism were looking at the Jasper Celestial sword in Duan Ling Tian's hand. A voice suddenly rang in Duan Lingtian's ears. It was none other than Hualao's voice. Take your wife and daughter away from Zoroastrianism before the sect leader of Zoroastrianism returns. Hualao's reminder jolted Duan Lingtian back to his senses. That was right. Tang Xian, the sect leader of Zoroastrianism, was still fighting fiercely with Lang Qianjin, the supreme elder of Zhuangzi Buddhism. He would not be able to return anytime soon. This was the best time for Duan Lingtian to rescue Ke and his daughter. Hualao, thank you. After thanking Hualao, Duan Lingtian noticed the gazes on the jasper celestial sword in his hand. An idea flashed in his mind as he thought of a way to send the high-ranking officials of Zoroastrianism away from the Zoroastrianism's base. For guardians, vice-sect leader, elders and vice-hall masters, Duan Lingtian swept his gaze across the high-ranking officials of Zoroastrianism and said, Hao Shuang's super saint weapon, the Dharma rod, is currently lost somewhere. I remember Hao Shuang's soul didn't flee in the direction where the Dharma rod was lost. Since I'm in a good mood today, why don't I play a game with all of you? Chapter 2209. Even a golden flame elder would pose a threat to Duan Lingtian among the high-ranking officials of Zoroastrianism present. Even if he consumed some pills to recover some of his saint energy, he would only be able to wield the strength of a golden flame elder for a short period of time. While he was rescuing Ke and her daughter, even if one or two golden flame elders tried to stop him, it would be a huge problem for him. Therefore, he had to think of a way to lure them away from Zoroastrianism, so that they would not ruin his plan. Coincidentally, there was a way for him to prevent the high-ranking officials of Zoroastrianism from returning to the Zoroastrianism's base for a short period of time. It was the super saint weapon, the Dharma rod. The Dharma rod had flown away with Hao Shuang's severed arm to some unknown location. When Hao Shuang fled, he did not flee in that direction. Therefore, Duan Lingtian was using it as bait to lure the high-ranking officials of Zoroastrianism to look for it. The super saint weapon, the Dharma rod, belongs to whoever finds it? Upon hearing Duan Lingtian's words, the high-ranking officials of Zoroastrianism, including the four guardians of Zoroastrianism, began to breathe rapidly. The Dharma rod could be considered as Duan Lingtian's spoils of war. For this reason, Duan Lingtian had the right to decide what to do with it. Now that Duan Lingtian had announced that he was going to use it as a reward, how could the high-ranking officials of Zoroastrianism not be tempted? Were they not shocked? Guardian Lingtian, are you serious? Lunging asked solemnly as he looked at Duan Lingtian. His eyes were shining brightly like two dazzling stars in the night sky. Of course. Duan Lingtian nodded with a smile. I won't joke in front of so many people. Why? Are all of you not interested? 10 breaths. I've already started the countdown. After 10 breaths, if I find the super saint weapon, the Dharma rod, you won't be able to get it. Duan Lingtian said mockingly when he saw that the high-ranking officials of Zoroastrianism did not make a move. As soon as Duan Lingtian's words left his mouth, let's go. The Dharma rod is mine. Humph, it's mine. The group of high-ranking officials from the fire worship sect made their move in the direction where the super saint weapon, the Dharma rod, had flown to. All of them wanted to be the first to find the Dharma rod. Even the four great guardians of the fire worship sect had made their move. Moreover, they were leading the way. Among them, Protector Zifeng's cultivation was the highest, his strength was the strongest, and his speed was the fastest. The super saint weapon, the super saint weapon, the Dharma rod to super saint weapon, to the super saint rod. It had to be said that no one could resist the benefit that Duan Lingtian had given them. Wah! After the high-ranking officials of Zoroastrianism disappeared, Duan Lingtian's body trembled violently. His face turned green and white as he opened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of blood. This mouthful of congested blood came from his stubbornness. He had endured it for a long time. Now that there was no one around, he did not have to hold it in anymore. While they're looking for the Dharma rod, it's time for me to bring Ke and her mother away from Zoroastrianism. After taking out a healing pill and a pill to restore his Saint Qi, Duan Lingtian rushed toward the Zoroastrianism's base as fast as he could. His destination was the Holy Land of Zoroastrianism, the sect leader of Zoroastrianism cultivated there. At this moment Kerr and her mother were inside. Although the direction of Hao Shuang's soul is different from the direction of the Super Saint weapon, the Dharma Rod, with the master recognition bond between Hao Shuang and the Dharma Rod, he'll definitely be able to locate the Dharma Rod in a short time. As the possessor of the Super Saint weapon, the Devil Seal tablet, Duan Lingtian knew about the connection between a person and the Super Saint weapon after it had acknowledged him as its master. At this moment, Hao Shuang's soul had most likely found the Super Saint weapon, the Dharma Rod. Even if the high-ranking officials of Zoroastrianism were to search for it, it would be futile. However, the soul of a powerhouse at the 8th form of the Saint Celestial stage, the soul detaching form, is able to exist in heaven and earth without any restrictions after using the soul detaching technique. It's as good as having an extra life. When Duan Lingtian was on his way to the sect leader of Zoroastrianism's cultivation place, he could not help but feel shocked when he recalled how Hao Shuang's soul had abandoned his body and fled. At that moment, all the energy in the Jasper Celestial Sword had been transferred to Hao Shuang's body. For this reason, after killing Hao Shuang's body, he could only watch as Hao Shuang's soul fled. He could not give chase. Otherwise, he would not have allowed Hao Shuang to live. As the saying went, if you cut the weeds without removing the roots, they'll grow again when the spring breeze blows. As Duan Lingtian made his way back, the Sun Saint origin in his body gradually recovered. His speed increased as well. Soon after, he arrived in the sky above the White Tiger Sanctum. It's Lingtian, guardian Duan Lingtian. As soon as Duan Lingtian appeared in the sky above the White Tiger Sanctum, he was discovered by the patrolling elders in the White Tiger Sanctum. Naturally, they did not dare to stop Duan Lingtian like they did when he first returned to Zoroastrianism. Put aside the fact that Duan Lingtian's identity was no longer the same as before since he could move freely in the sky above the White Tiger Sanctum. Just his strength alone was enough to make them flinch. They did not dare to provoke him. Guardian Lingtian, the person involved, has returned. Does this mean the people from the Zhuangzi Buddhism have retreated? Many of the elders in the White Tiger Sanctum thought to themselves when they saw Duan Lingtian had returned. Soon after, news of Duan Lingtian's return spread throughout the White Tiger Sanctum and caused a commotion. Guardian Lingtian has returned? Does this mean the Supreme Elder did not manage to gain anything from the Zhuangzi Buddhism, even though he personally made a move? Humph. Lord Sect Leader is now a powerhouse at the 9th form of the Saint Celestial stage. It's only natural that he's not afraid of Supreme Elder Zhuangzi Buddhism. Everyone in the White Tiger Sanctum was discussing among themselves. Duan Lingtian had also returned to the Saint Land of Zoroastrianism. He immediately soared into the sky and arrived at the floating islands in the clouds above the Saint Island. Now there were no longer only 3 floating islands below the highest floating island, but 5 floating islands. The 2 floating islands were none other than the cultivation grounds of the 2 new guardians, Duan Lingtian and Leng Ying, the Silver Flame Elder from the Zoroastrianism, who was in charge of patrolling the area since the commotion, and rushed over when he saw someone approaching. However, when he saw the person who had arrived was Duan Lingtian, he retreated. It's Lingtian, guardian Duan Lingtian. He's back. The Silver Flame Elder who was in charge of patrolling the area was shocked when he saw Duan Lingtian had returned safely, since Lang Qianjin, the Supreme Elder of the Zhuangzi Buddhism, had spoken to everyone in the Zoroastrianism. He knew what had happened today. After a while, Duan Lingtian arrived at the sect leader of the Zoroastrianism's cultivation place. It was located at the highest point of the floating island. This floating island was at the highest point. There was no other floating island around it. It was more like a high and mighty emperor that looked down at its subjects. A formation? Duan Lingtian discovered the existence of a formation when he arrived at the sect leader of the Zoroastrianism's cultivation place. However, Duan Lingtian could easily destroy the formation with his celestial supreme treasure, the Jasper celestial sword, since he had recovered some of his Sun Saint energy. Whoosh! Duan Lingtian took out the Jasper celestial sword and injected some Sun Saint energy into it. With a wave of his hand, a sword ray shot out and easily destroyed the formation that was blocking his way. Kerr! Duan Lingtian cried out excitedly when he arrived at the sect leader of the Zoroastrianism's cultivation place. Although his voice was not loud, it contained a trace of Sun Saint energy, so it could be heard clearly in every corner of the mansion. Meanwhile, in one of the courtyards in Duan Lingtian's mansion, a beautiful woman who was pacing back and forth with a worried expression on her face trembled when she heard the voice. She lifted her head and looked at the sky. A purple figure stood there with a sword in his hand. It was none other than the figure that she had been dreaming about. Young master. The woman was so excited that her face flushed red. It was as though she had just encountered a joyous occasion. This woman was none other than Kerr. Seeing that her man was safe and sound, she finally felt relieved. After all, she was so anxious that her heart almost jumped out of her chest when she learned that the Supreme Elder of Zhuangzi Buddhism, the powerhouse who was ranked second on the Supreme Saint ranking, had come looking for trouble with her man. It's him? He's back. The people from Zhuangzi Buddhism didn't make things difficult for him? At the same time, Gan Ruyen, who had heard the voice, walked out of the room at the side of the courtyard. She lifted her head and looked at the familiar figure in the sky with a hint of surprise in her eyes. She had heard the voice of the Supreme Elder of Zhuangzi Buddhism, Lang Qianjin, when the people from Zhuangzi Buddhism had arrived. Lang Qianjin had come for Duan Lingtian with ill intentions. Because of this, her heart couldn't help but hang in the air, let alone her younger sister. Kerr. Although Kerr's voice was not loud, Duan Lingtian, who had extended his divine consciousness, heard it. Duan Lingtian immediately locked onto the source of the voice. He focused his strange pupil, and a graceful figure that he had been dreaming about appeared in his line of sight. Kerr. Duan Lingtian was overjoyed. He descended from the sky and charged toward Kerr. Outside the courtyard where Kerr was, Duan Lingtian encountered another formation that blocked his way. Once again, he destroyed it with a wave of his sword. When Duan Lingtian destroyed the formation, a voice rang in the air. Saint Girl. Tang Xian, the sect leader of Zoroastrianism, who was fighting with the Supreme Elder of Zhuangzi Buddhism in the distance, also sensed something. His expression changed drastically. Chapter 22:10. Who is it? Who is the person who destroyed the formation I set up outside the Saint Girl's courtyard? Tang Xian, the sect leader of Zoroastrianism, had a ghastly expression on his face after he dodged the attack from Lang Qianjin, the Supreme Elder of Zhuangzi Buddhism. Before he left the Zoroastrianism base, he had casually set up a formation outside the courtyard where the Saint Girl of Zoroastrianism lived. Since it was a hastily set up formation, its defensive strength was not strong. Even a golden flame elder of Zoroastrianism could easily destroy it. The reason he set up the formation was to prevent the Saint Girl and her daughter from escaping. Even Gan Ruyen, the most powerful person by the Saint Girl and her daughter's side, was unable to destroy the formation. For this reason, he was not worried at all. However, although he was at ease, he still kept an eye out and did something to the formation. As long as the formation was destroyed, he would be able to sense it immediately. At this moment, he sensed that the formation had been destroyed. Moreover, it was destroyed in an instant. In other words, the person who destroyed the formation was at least as strong as a golden flame elder of Zoroastrianism, or even stronger. Boom, 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 boom. At the same time, Lang Qianjin's attack, which Tang Xian had managed to dodge in time, landed heavily on the barren mountain beneath their feet as it missed its target. Suddenly, the entire barren mountain shook as if there was a violent earthquake. Smoke and dust filled the air, as though it had just been baptized by the flames of war. After the smoke and dust settled, a bottomless pit appeared out of thin air in the barren mountain. Just by looking into the pit, one could feel chills running down one's spine. It was as though there was a terrifying monster in the pit. Tang Xian, how dare you be distracted when you're fighting me? After his attack failed, Lang Qianjin did not continue to attack. Instead, he hovered in the air and looked at Tang Xian with a grave expression on his face. Naturally, he noticed Tang Xian's absent-mindedness. For this reason, he felt Tang Xian's actions were an insult to him. Elder Lang, let's call it a day. I have something to deal with now. We'll fight again in the future. Upon hearing Lang Qianjin's voice, Tang Xian glanced at him. At this moment, Tang Xian's gaze was so cold that even Lang Qianjin could not help but tremble when he saw it. Without waiting for Lang Qianjin's response, his body turned into a shadow and dissipated with the wind, as if he had been weathered into the void. Seeing this, Lang Qianjin's face turned even uglier. However, he did not do anything. This was because he knew it was impossible for him to chase after Tang Xian since Tang Xian had already cast the divine ability that was widely acknowledged as the #1 movement divine ability in the upper province of the Dao Martial Saint Land. Where did Tang Xian's movement divine ability come from? Lang Qianjin's expression was slightly distorted. A hint of jealousy could be seen on his slightly distorted face. I've never heard of Zoroastrianism having such a divine ability. Where did he obtain this divine ability? How did he come across such a fortuitous encounter? At that time, even with my cultivation base at the 9th form of the Saint Celestial stage, and the Black Kshetra sect's most treasured divine ability, Tang Xian still managed to escape from me. At that time, his cultivation base was only at the 8th form of the Saint Celestial stage. The Zhuangzi Buddhism's divine ability was an extremely powerful assist-type divine ability. Although it was not widely acknowledged as the best assist-type divine ability in the Dao Martial Saint Land, there were not many assist-type divine abilities in the Dao Martial Saint Land that could compare to it. Although Lang Qianjin, who was at the 9th form of the Saint Celestial stage, had cast this divine ability, he could only watch helplessly as Tang Xian, who was at the 8th form of the Saint Celestial stage, escaped. Based on this, one could see how extraordinary the #1 movement divine ability in the Dao Martial Saint Land that Tang Xian mastered was. When Tang Xian's cultivation base was only at the 8th form of the Saint Celestial stage, Lang Qianjin could not catch up to him, let alone now. For this reason, Lang Qianjin did not chase after Tang Xian when he saw Tang Xian casting the movement divine ability. He knew he would not be able to catch up to Tang Xian even if he tried. If that was the case, why would he waste his energy? Lang Qianjin raised an eyebrow as though he had sensed something. As he waved his hand, a green light that was flying over from afar was caught in his hand. When he opened his hand, he saw it was a communication jade token. Crack. After crushing the communication jade slip, a familiar voice clearly entered Lang Qianjin's ears. Lang Qianjin's expression changed drastically. How is this possible? An expression of shock and disbelief appeared on Lang Qianjin's face. This was because the news he received from the communication jade slip was simply too shocking. The sect leader of Black Kshetra sect had personally passed this communication jade token to him. The sect leader of Black Kshetra sect had told him everything that had happened after he left. That lucky brat who killed the Golden Lion King managed to defeat Hao Shuang with just one strike? Hao Shuang had no choice but to abandon his body and flee. If it wasn't for the fact that he intentionally spared Hao Shuang's life, so Hao Shuang could seek revenge from the Zhuangzi Buddhism in the future, he might have been able to kill Hao Shuang with just one strike. Sect leader had to sever his own arm because of Hao Shuang's threat? Lang Qianjin was completely stunned when he heard this news. He did not expect that Tang Xian would be able to defeat Tang Xian. After he had dealt with Tang Xian, the sect leader of the Zoroastrianism, Hao Shuang, the strongest person below the 9th form of the Saint Celestial stage in the Dao Martial Saint Land, had helped them, and yet they still ended up in such a sorry state. What kind of fortuitous encounter did Duan Lingtian obtain in the independent space left behind by the 3 eminent devils? After a while, Lang Qianjin regained his senses. Lang Qianjin's face twisted again, until it became ferocious and terrifying. The heavens are unfair. Why are all the people from the Zoroastrianism so lucky? Lang Qianjin suddenly looked up at the sky with a resentful expression on his face. Whether it was Tang Xian, the sect leader of the Zoroastrianism, or Duan Lingtian, the guardian of the Zoroastrianism, their fortuitous encounters, and the benefits they obtained from their fortuitous encounters made Lang Qianjin so jealous that he was about to go crazy. Tang Xian had obtained the number 1 movement divine ability in the Dao Martial Saint Land due to a fortuitous encounter. Duan Lingtian, on the other hand, had obtained the strength of the strongest person below the 9th form of the Saint Celestial stage in the Dao Martial Saint Land due to a fortuitous encounter. This isn't over. This isn't over. Zoroastrianism, Duan Lingtian, I Lang Qianjin, will remember this. I Lang Qianjin will remember this. Although Lang Qianjin was unwilling to accept it, he had no choice but to accept it. The Zhuangzi Buddhism had lost the battle between Zoroastrianism and Zhuangzi Buddhism. Naturally, he could go to the Zoroastrianism alone and vent his anger on the ordinary elders and disciples of Zoroastrianism. However, the consequences of that would be the sect leader of Zoroastrianism would follow suit and go to the Zhuangzi Buddhism to vent his anger on the ordinary elders and disciples of Zhuangzi Buddhism. When he thought about the consequences, no matter how angry he was, he could only suppress his anger. There would be plenty of time in the future. He did not believe there would not be a chance for him to deal with Zoroastrianism in the future. In the Zoroastrianism estate, the cultivation place of the sect leader of Zoroastrianism. But, Duan Lingtian looked at the woman who had been in his dreams for many years. He was so emotional that he did not know what to say. At the same time, he could not help but reach out to touch the woman's face with his trembling hand. However, he stopped halfway as he was afraid his hand would not touch her. The beautiful woman before him had appeared in his dreams many times. Now that she was standing in front of him, he was at a loss for what to do. He was afraid this was just a dream. Young master. 2 streams of clear tears fell from Ku'er's face that could be said to be exceedingly beautiful. And then her delicate body trembled as she threw herself into Duan Lingtian's embrace, unable to restrain her emotions. At this moment, she had completely thrown aside all her feminine modesty. Now in her eyes, there was only this man who she had been thinking about day and night. The heat in his arms made Duan Lingtian realize that everything in front of him was not his imagination. He was not dreaming. The woman who had been in his dreams was now standing in front of him and lying in his arms. Duan Lingtian also reached out and hugged Ker tightly, as if he was afraid she would leave him. I'm late. I'm late. You're not late, you're not late. Ker, who was lying in Duan Lingtian's arms, shook her head. Her tear-stained face was full of satisfaction. She hugged Duan Lingtian even tighter, as if she was worried that the man she had been thinking about day and night would leave her again. Duan Lingtian hugged Ker, and felt his heart was at peace. He was like a wanderer who had found a harbor to rest in. A gentle home, a hero's grave, there was nothing better than this. At this moment, a voice sounded and broke the beautiful atmosphere. If I'm not mistaken, you must have sneaked back while the sect leader and the others were fighting with the Zhuangzi Buddhism, right? Now shouldn't we leave first? At some point in time, Gan Ruyen, who was hugging a little girl who was fast asleep, was standing next to Duan Lingtian and Kur. When Gan Ruyen's words fell into Duan Lingtian's ears, Duan Lingtian felt as if he had woken up from a dream. That's right. Kur, we have to leave now. At this moment, Duan Lingtian finally regained his senses. Just as Duan Lingtian regained his senses and spoke to Ku'er's expression changed. Guardian Lingtian? It's really you. A low and deep voice that was mixed with anger sounded like a thunderclap from afar, and it caused Duan Lingtian and the other 2's faces to turn pale. Whoosh! Chapter 22:11. The figure that seemed to have appeared out of thin air in front of Duan Lingtian and the others and rapidly solidified was none other than the leader of Zoroastrianism, Tang Xian, sect leader. Duan Lingtian's pupils suddenly constricted when he saw Tang Xian, and he revealed an expression of shock and disbelief. How was this possible? Wasn't the sect leader of Zoroastrianism fighting fiercely with the Grand Elder of Zhuangzi Buddhism? How could he have returned so quickly? Gan Ruyan's expression changed when she saw Tang Xian return. As for Ke, her expression changed slightly, but she still stuck close to Duan Lingtian. It was as if as long as Duan Lingtian was by her side, she was not afraid of anything. The little girl in Gan Ruyan's arms was Duan Lingtian and Ke's daughter, Duan Xiling. She lay quietly in Gan Ruyan's arms. The reason why she was so quiet was because Gan Ruyan had given her a pill that would allow her to sleep temporarily without any side effects. This was to prevent her and her mother from worrying about her father's safety. Guardian Lingtian, I didn't expect it to be you. Tang Xian looked at Duan Lingtian with a gloomy expression. His eyes were cold and piercing, as if he was about to devour Duan Lingtian. Previously, although he noticed Duan Lingtian resembled the daughter of their Zoroastrianism saint, he only suspected Duan Lingtian was the saint's man in the lower province. Of course, at the same time, he also thought of a way to test Duan Lingtian. That method was the statement he had deliberately made to the outside world. 3 months later, the saint's daughter would be executed. In his opinion, as long as Guardian Lingtian of the Zoroastrianism was the saint girl's man in the lower province, he would definitely not watch his daughter die. At that time, he would definitely give himself away. This was the opportunity Tang Xian had been waiting for. However, he did not expect Lingtian of the Zoroastrianism would be exposed even before that. It's really me? Although Duan Lingtian was shocked by Tang Xian's appearance, he could not help but feel puzzled when he heard Tang Xian's words. He did not understand what Tang Xian's words meant. As though he saw Duan Lingtian's daughter's confusion, Tang Xian snorted and said, I noticed that the saint's daughter's daughter resembles you. Moreover, you're from the lower province of the lower the saint as well. Therefore, I'm suspicious you're the saint's man of the saint's daughter of the lower province of the saints of the saint of the lower of the saint of heaven. Daughter, Duan of the saints Ling of C daughter daughters of C saint of the saints of the other saint S of C of her of Lingtian, of that of she C of her, of C. The little girl was lying in Gan Ruyan's arms. Only half of her cute little face could be seen. However, it was difficult to hide the resemblance between them. This is Ke's and my daughter? Duan Lingtian's heart skipped a beat when he looked at the little girl. The feeling of being connected by blood melted his heart at this moment. This was his daughter. His and Ke's daughter. However, before I can confirm it, it's just a suspicion. Tang Xian's voice resonated in the air. Initially, I wanted to wait 3 months and pretend to execute the saint girl's daughter to confirm my suspicions. I didn't expect you to expose yourself in advance. Tang Xian's voice was filled with rage as he spoke. It was as though he was extremely furious. Swoosh, swoosh. Upon hearing Tang Xian's words, both Ke and Gan Ruyan's expressions changed drastically. Previously, they were unaware that Tang Xian had announced to the public that he was going to execute Duan Xiling. So, you released the news that you're going to execute my daughter to bait me into taking the bait? Upon hearing Tang Xian's words, Duan Lingtian finally understood the situation. His expression darkened immediately. I didn't bait you into taking the bait. Tang Xian continued to say coldly. Previously, I wasn't sure if you were the man the saint girl had found in the lower province. I merely wanted to test you. If you weren't, everyone would be happy. However, if you are, even if you're the guardian of Zoroastrianism, your sin is unforgivable. Tang Xian's words were filled with determination. It was as though there was no room for negotiation. If Duan Lingtian was the man the saint girl of Zoroastrianism had found in the lower province, Duan Lingtian would be an unforgivable sinner. Lord Sect Leader. At this moment, Gan Ruyan looked at Tang Xian and said, Currently, Duan Lingtian is the guardian of Zoroastrianism. He's the pillar of Zoroastrianism. Can't we give him the privilege to disregard the rules of the sect? In the past, in Zoroastrianism, Didn't guardians have the privilege to disregard the rules of the sect as well? According to the rules of the sect, he's going to be executed. If he's dead, it'll be a huge loss to Zoroastrianism. It'll only bring harm to us. Gan Ruyan's intention was to convince Tang Xian to let Duan Lingtian go. Moreover, she had given Duan Lingtian and her younger sister the green light to fulfill their wishes and allow the lovers to finally get married. Little Ruyan, it's best if you don't interfere in this matter. Otherwise, don't blame me for being ruthless even if your guardian Qing was direct disciple. Tang Xian's expression darkened when he heard Gan Ruyan's words. He glared at her. If the saint girl of Zoroastrianism was just an ordinary saint, he would naturally give the green light to Duan Lingtian and the saint girl, because of how important Duan Lingtian was to Zoroastrianism. He would even take the initiative to matchmake them and turn their story into a story of Zoroastrianism. However, this saint girl was not an ordinary saint girl. Her origin was not simple at all. Her existence was related to that godlike expert. For this reason, he did not dare to act recklessly. Not only did he not dare to act recklessly, but he also had to imprison Duan Lingtian and wait for the godlike powerhouse's judgment in the mundane realm. Tang Xian's words to Gan Ruyan showed how determined he was about the matter between Duan Lingtian and Ke. There was no way he would allow the Duan Lingtian to be together with the saint girl of Zoroastrianism. Even if Duan Lingtian was the pillar of Zoroastrianism, Tang Xian would not allow it. Duan Lingtian's expression changed drastically when he heard Tang Xian's words. Initially he was still thinking, now that Tang Xian had seen through his disguise, perhaps he could use his current strength to make Tang Xian appreciate talents and not pursue the matter between him and Ke. He did not expect Tang Xian to be so resolute. Duan Lingtian realized there was no way he could let this matter go, so he did not waste his breath. It seems like I can only try to lure Tang Xian into the Seven Treasures Exquisite Pagoda and ask Hualao to kill him before he kills me. Otherwise, I'll be the one who dies. Moreover, after I die, Ke and her mother will be in danger as well. At this moment, Duan Lingtian had no other choice. This was the only thing he could do. Otherwise, he could not think of any other way to turn the situation around. Hualao! Duan Lingtian immediately contacted Elder Hua as soon as he decided to do it. It's too risky. He might not fall for it. This was Hualao's reply to Duan Lingtian. I know it's too risky and he might not fall for it. However, Hualao, do you think I have any other choice? Duan Lingtian asked bitterly. Put the Jasper Celestial Sword and the Universe Ruler back into the Seven Treasures Exquisite Pagoda. I'll try to see if I can send both of you back to the lower province of the Dao Martial Saint Land. Hualao's voice resonated again, shocking Duan Lingtian. Hualao said, What do you mean? Send them back to the lower province of the Dao Martial Saint Land? Hualao, you. Duan Lingtian was about to ask something when Hualao interrupted him. There's no need to ask. What you need to do now is to put the Jasper Celestial Sword and the Universe Ruler back into the Seven Treasures Exquisite Pagoda. All right. All this while, Hualao had never lied to Duan Lingtian. Duan Lingtian trusted Hualao very much. Since Hualao had said so much, there was no need for him to hesitate anymore. With just a thought, he moved the Jasper Celestial Sword and the Universe Ruler from his spatial ring to the Seven Treasures Exquisite Pagoda. Almost as soon as Duan Lingtian put the Jasper Celestial Sword and the Universe Ruler back into the Seven Treasures Exquisite Pagoda, something happened. Duan Lingtian discovered the Seven Treasures Exquisite Pagoda, that was originally the size of a speck of dust in his ear, actually flew out on its own. It seemed like it was out of his control. Didn't Hualao say before that although he's the pagoda spirit of the Seven Treasures Exquisite Pagoda, he can't control the pagoda? Duan Lingtian was confused when he saw this. Meanwhile, Duan Lingtian, Tang Xian, the sect leader of Zoroastrianism, shouted coldly. He moved in an attempt to capture Duan Lingtian. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. In just a blink of an eye, the sound of swords whistling in the air rang in the air. A circular light shield formed from tens of thousands of blood-red sword rays appeared and shrouded Duan Lingtian, Ke, Gan Ru Yen, and Duan Si Ling. The seven treasures' exquisite pagoda that flew out on its own was also shrouded by the light shield. Who's there? Tang Xian's expression changed drastically when he saw the light shield that appeared out of thin air. His saint origin surged out as the strength of a powerhouse, at the ninth form of the Saint Celestial stage, surged out like a bolt of lightning. This! Duan Lingtian was stunned when he saw the light shield that appeared out of thin air and shrouded him. As a sword cultivator, he could clearly sense how terrifying the tens of thousands of blood-red sword rays that formed the light shield were. This is Elder Hu's technique? Rip! All of a sudden, the sound of something being torn apart rang in the air, attracting Duan Lingtian's attention. In the next moment, Duan Lingtian saw a crack appearing in the void. In the void where the seven treasures' exquisite pagoda was, a crack appeared out of thin air. Behind the crack was extremely dark, and no one knew where it led to. Chapter 22:12. Almost as soon as Duan Lingtian and the others were sucked into the tear in the void, Tang Xian, the sect leader of Zoroastrianism, unleashed his energy on the light shield formed by the blood-red sword rays. Boom! 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 Following a series of loud booms, small mushroom clouds appeared on the side of the light barrier one after another. Terrifying shockwaves also spread out in all directions. In just a blink of an eye, the huge courtyard was reduced to rubble. Moreover, the shockwaves continued to sweep out in all directions after the courtyard was reduced to rubble. A few moments later, half of Tang Xian's mansion was reduced to rubble. Smoke and dust filled the air, as though it was the end of the world. However, Tang Xian did not seem to notice this at all. Naturally, it was not that he did not notice this at all. It was just that he was distracted by something else. How's this possible? Tang Xian was shocked when he discovered this. When his power whizzed out and slammed into the circular light shield in front of him, no matter how the void outside shook and distorted, the circular light shield remained unmoved, as if it had not suffered any damage at all. Although Tang Xian did not use his full strength earlier, he had used 70 to 80% of his strength. Even a defensive technique cast by a powerhouse at the ninth form of the Saint Celestial stage would not be damaged by his energy. The light shield formed by the blood-red sword rays hovered motionlessly in the air. The tear in the void that appeared out of thin air and sucked Duan Lingtian and the others into it gradually disappeared, as though it was never there in the first place. Tang Xian could only watch on helplessly. Sir, who are you? At this moment, Tang Xian did not have the time to care about Duan Lingtian and the others. He looked at the light shield that was formed by tens of thousands of blood-red sword rays and asked solemnly, "What's the matter?" The circular light barrier hovered in the air, seemingly separating two different worlds from one another. Earlier, he did not have the time to examine it. However, when Tang Xian carefully examined the light shield, he could clearly sense a terrifying aura. It was as though the aura was capable of destroying everything. Apart from that, Tang Xian had also witnessed the invincibility of the demonic beast through the probing earlier. To a certain extent, a powerhouse who could form such a light shield with his, or her own strength, had transcended the mundane realm. Tang Xian was well aware of this. After all, he had encountered such a powerhouse a few decades ago. That was a godlike powerhouse. Up until now, Tang Xian was still horrified when he recalled the strength that expert revealed with every single move, and he felt a strand of coldness rise from the bottom of his feet to his head. However, as soon as Tang Xian finished speaking, whoosh! The circular light barrier formed by tens of thousands of blood-red sword glows disappeared in front of Tang Xian's eyes with a gentle gust of wind. It was as though it had never appeared. All of a sudden, Tang Xian was the only one left standing in the void. Apart from that, there was a huge ruin. Gasp! After a long while, Tang Xian finally regained his senses. He could not help but gasp. The light shield formed by the tens of thousands of blood-red sword rays had disappeared without a trace in just a blink of an eye. He knew very well what this meant. This meant that the light shield was not weak at all. That light shield was formed by a powerhouse with just a wave of his hand. Just a wave of his hand, and his technique is so powerful. I'm afraid such a powerhouse would be extraordinary even in the Devata realms. Tang Xian's breathing quickened when he thought of this. At the same time he looked around vigilantly. However, he could not find anything even after he looked around for a long time. In the lower province of the Dao Martial Saint Land, outside a dilapidated village, Rip, accompanied by the sound of something being torn apart, a hideous and terrifying crack appeared in the void. The crack continued to expand until it was 10 meters long before it stopped expanding. After it stopped expanding, it began to shrink rapidly. It was as though a spring had been pulled open. After it was released, it began to shrink rapidly. As the crack shrank, 3 figures rushed out from it. It was a purple-clothed young man and 2 women, who looked exactly the same, but had completely different temperaments. One of the women was carrying a little girl, who was fast asleep in her arms. Walao! The purple-clad young man's expression changed drastically when he saw the 4 of them. He cried out in agony. The 2 women regained their senses when they heard the purple-clad young man's cry. They immediately looked at the purple-clad young man. "Young master, what's wrong?" The woman with the temperament as gentle as jade looked at the purple-clad young man worriedly. She had a concerned expression on her face, and when she asked, her tone was filled with anxiety. However, the purple-clothed young man acted as if he did not hear the woman's words. He continued to stand there with a pained expression on his face. His body continued to tremble, as if he had encountered something that caused him great pain. "Duan Lingtian?" The cold-looking woman with the little girl in her arms looked at the purple-clad young man with a frown on her face. The purple-clad young man was none other than Duan Lingtian. Just a moment ago, he, the 2 women, and the little girl were still in Zoroastrianism, in the upper province's western province of the Dao Martial Saint Land. However, at this moment, they had traveled through space and arrived in the lower province of the Dao Martial Saint Land. During this process, Duan Lingtian discovered that he was no longer in the lower province. Not only had he lost contact with Hualao, but he had also lost contact with Hualao. Not only that, but even the connection between him and the 7 Treasures Exquisite Pagoda had disappeared as well. The 7 Treasures Exquisite Pagoda had long acknowledged him as its master, and there was a bloodline connection between them. However, the bloodline connection had disappeared without a trace. When Duan Lingtian saw this, he immediately speculated, "What's going on? Hualao must have used some forbidden technique to self-destruct the 7 Treasures Exquisite Pagoda, to protect them, and forcefully tear open the space barrier between the upper province and the lower province of the Dao Martial Saint Land, to send them back to the lower province. If the 7 Treasures Exquisite Pagoda had not been destroyed, how could the connection between them have been severed? If the 7 Treasures Exquisite Pagoda is destroyed, Hualao won't be able to survive." Duan Lingtian's heart trembled violently when he thought of this. Ever since he had obtained the 7 Treasures Exquisite Pagoda and met Hualao, the scenes of Hualao helping him flashed before his eyes. Now, in order to protect him, Elder Hu did not hesitate to sacrifice himself. "Hualao!" Duan Lingtian cried out in grief again, as he knelt down to pray for Hualao's soul in heaven. Although Kerr did not know what had happened, she did not know who the Hualao that Duan Lingtian had mentioned was. However, she could clearly feel her man's pain. Due to this reason, she immediately knelt down with him and silently stayed by his side. Gan Ruyen stood at the side with a confused expression on her face. Not only was she confused by Duan Lingtian's action of kneeling, but she was also confused about why she had suddenly appeared in this place. This place seems to be the lower province? The heaven and earth spirit energy in this place was far from the upper province of the Dao Martial Saint Land. However, it gave Gan Ruyen a sense of familiarity. It was as though she had been to the lower province before. "Kerr!" Duan Lingtian, who had been kneeling for a while, finally spoke in a hoarse voice. "We've already returned to the lower province. The reason we were able to return to the lower province from the Zoroastrianism estate in the upper province is because Hualao sacrificed himself. He sacrificed himself to forcefully tear open the void and send us back to the lower province. That's how we managed to escape from the sect leader of Zoroastrianism. When Duan Lingtian reached the end of his sentence, apart from sadness, there was a hint of disappointment in his voice as well. Upon hearing Duan Lingtian's words, Kerr finally understood everything. She finally understood why her man was in so much pain, and why he was kneeling in the void. As it turned out, it was all because of Hua Lao, who had sacrificed himself to save them and send them back to the lower province. Hua Lao, thank you for saving young master and us. Thank you. Following that, Kerr kowtowed 3 times to the void as well. A hint of sadness could be heard in her voice. Although Kerr had never come into contact with Hua Lao before this, and she did not know about his existence, the kind-hearted Kerr was still saddened by what Hua Lao had done. Hua Lao. After learning about what had happened, Gan Ru Yin also kneeled and kowtowed 3 times to the void with a solemn expression on her face. At this moment, some of the questions in her heart were finally answered. It was no wonder Duan Lingtian thought Hua Lao, the pagoda spirit of the 7 Treasures Exquisite Pagoda, had sacrificed his life and the 7 Treasures Exquisite Pagoda to save them from the sect leader of Zoroastrianism and send them back to the lower province of the Dao Martial Saint Land. This was because of what Duan Lingtian had experienced earlier. He could only come up with such a conjecture. Apart from this, he could not think of any other possibility. Most importantly, he discovered that the connection between him and the 7 Treasures Exquisite Pagoda was no longer there. Unless the 7 Treasures Exquisite Pagoda was destroyed, how could it have lost its connection with him? However, was this really the truth of the matter? In the upper province of the Dao Martial Saint Land, somewhere outside the Zoroastrianism's estate in the western province, a young man dressed in a blood-red robe hovered in the air. A 7-level exquisite pagoda lay quietly in his hand. If Duan Lingtian was here, he would definitely be able to recognize it with just a glance. Chapter 22:13. Lord, are we really not going to greet him? In the 7 Treasures Exquisite Pagoda, Hua Lao asked the red-clad young man, through voice transmission with a wry smile on his face. Previously, when Duan Lingtian was facing the sect leader of Zoroastrianism, the red-clad young man had asked him to trick Duan Lingtian into putting the Celestial Supreme Treasures, the Jasper Celestial Sword, and the Universe Ruler back into the 7 Treasures Exquisite Pagoda. As for sending Duan Lingtian back to the lower province, it was also the red-clad young man who had asked him to do so. Later on, the red-clad young man had blocked the attack of the sect leader of Zoroastrianism and sent Duan Lingtian and the others back to the lower province. The red-clad young man had even forcefully severed the connection between Duan Lingtian and the 7 Treasures Exquisite Pagoda, causing the 7 Treasures Exquisite Pagoda to lose its master. At the same time, it caused Duan Lingtian to lose the 7 Treasures Exquisite Pagoda, a celestial supreme treasure. Hua Lao could only imagine, if Duan Lingtian discovered the connection between him and the 7 Treasures Exquisite Pagoda had been severed after he returned to the lower province of the Dao Martial Saint Land, his imagination would definitely run wild. For this reason, he asked the red-clad young man. The red-clad young man was none other than Kuang Ling, the sword soul of the Devata artifact, the solitary destructive flaming heavenly sword. I know what I'm doing. Hearing Elder Hua's voice transmission, the sword soul, Kuang Ling, responded faintly. Then he stepped on the air and shot toward the sky. After an unknown period of time, and how far Kuang Ling had flown, all of a sudden his figure came to a halt. In the next moment, swish, Kuang Ling raised his hand and pointed a finger forward. A blood-red sword light whizzed out from his fingertip, leaving behind a sinister and terrifying crack in the void. As soon as this crack appeared, it was several tens of meters long. It looked extremely exaggerated. Immediately after, Kuang Ling's figure flashed and entered the crack together with the 7 Treasures Exquisite Pagoda. As soon as Kuang Ling left, the rift began to shrink rapidly. In the blink of an eye, the spatial crack had completely closed up, as if it had never appeared. After that, the void returned to its calm state. East of the Zoroastrianism encampment, a group of Zoroastrianism high-ranking officials returned. These senior managers of Zoroastrianism were headed by the 2 deputy heads of Zoroastrianism. The rest of them were either Golden Flame Elders or deputy heads of the Law Enforcement Hall of Zoroastrianism. After searching for so long, we still haven't found a trace of the super saint weapon, the Dharma Rod. Do all of you think the 4 guardians found the Dharma Rod in advance? Suddenly, a Golden Flame Elder of Zoroastrianism guessed. It's possible. After all, the speed of the 4 guardians is much faster than us. Moreover, we didn't see them all the way here. The super saint weapon, the Dharma Rod, has most likely been obtained by one of them. Another Golden Flame Elder nodded. Based on his words, it was obvious he agreed with the former's words. Guardians, if you found the super saint weapon, the Dharma Rod, you should have told us about it. We've been searching like idiots for so long, but we still couldn't find it in the end. A Golden Flame Elder grumbled softly. His words resonated with many of the people in the surroundings. Even the 2 deputy sect leaders felt the same way. I wonder which guardian obtained the super saint weapon, the Dharma Rod. Duan Lingtian muttered to himself. After entering the Zoroastrianism encampment's White Tiger Sanctum, one of the vice hall masters of the Law Enforcement Hall brought up the topic. The group of Zoroastrianism high-ranking officials began to discuss among themselves. I think it's Guardian Zifeng. I think it's Guardian Zifeng as well. After all, apart from Guardian Lingtian, Guardian Zifeng is the strongest out of the 3 guardians. The super saint weapon, the Dharma Rod, is most likely his. I don't think it's Guardian Zifeng. After all, it's normal for a person to make a mistake. Although Guardian Zifeng is the strongest and the fastest among the 4 guardians, it doesn't mean he'll definitely be able to find the super saint weapon, the Dharma Rod. That makes sense as well. However, was the super saint weapon, the Dharma Rod, really in the hands of the 4 guardians of the Zoroastrianism? Naturally, the answer was no. The 4 guardians from the fire worship sect continued to search in the direction where the super saint weapon, the Dharma Rod, flew out with Hao Shuang's severed arm. They searched every inch of the area until they reached a faraway place. However, their efforts were in vain. At this moment, they could not help but suspect Hao Shuang had returned and taken the super saint weapon, the Dharma Rod. Naturally, they returned empty-handed as well. As soon as they returned to the Zoroastrianism's estate and passed by the White Tiger Sanctum, they heard many disciples in the White Tiger Sanctum discussing the Great Battle of the Saint Land. Great Battle of the Saint Land? For a moment, they thought the sect leader of the Zoroastrianism, Tang Xian, and the supreme elder of the Zhuangzi Buddhism, Lang Qianjin, had returned from the battle. They immediately returned to the Saint Land of Zoroastrianism. When they returned to the Saint Land, they learned the commotion came from the sky above the Saint Island. They flew through the clouds and arrived near their cultivation place. When the 4 of them looked at the highest point of the floating island, they were dumbfounded. They could clearly see it. The cultivation place of their sect leader of the Zoroastrianism. The huge mansion was in ruins. Moreover, their sect leader of the Zoroastrianism, Tang Xian, was hovering in the air above the ruins. He was motionless. No one knew what he was doing. Greetings, Lord Guardians. At this moment, a silver figure flew over from the distance. When he saw the 4 great guardians of the fire worship sect, he bowed respectfully at them. It was none other than the Silver Flame Elder of the Zoroastrianism, who was in charge of patrolling the area. What's going on? Guardian Lung Ying asked with a frown on his face, as he looked at the Silver Flame Elder. At this moment, he and the other 3 Zoroastrianism guardians could vaguely guess what was going on. The destruction of the cultivation place of their sect leader of the Zoroastrianism had nothing to do with the supreme elder of the Zhuangzi Buddhism. If their sect leader of the Zoroastrianism and the supreme elder of the Zhuangzi Buddhism had fought here, it was impossible for only half of the mansion of their sect leader of the Zoroastrianism sect to be in ruins. The battle between 2 powerhouses at the 9th form of the Saint Celestial stage should have destroyed all the floating islands. I'm not too sure what's going on. The Silver Flame Elder smiled wryly. All I know is that not long after Guardian Ling Tian returned, there was a huge commotion here. By the time I arrived, it was already like this. Lord Sect Leader has been standing there for a long time. As the Silver Flame Elder spoke, he looked at the floating island at the highest point. His gaze landed on Tang Xian, the sect leader of the Zoroastrianism. Guardian Ling Tian? Upon hearing the Silver Flame Elder's words, the 4 guardians of the Zoroastrianism sect frowned. After the Silver Flame Elder left, the 4 of them soared into the sky to look for Tang Xian, the sect leader of the Zoroastrianism sect. Lord Sect Leader, what's going on? Tang Xian regained his senses when he saw the 4 guardians of the Zoroastrianism. His tense nerves finally relaxed. Earlier, when Tang Xian realized there might be a powerhouse who was stronger than the mundane realm hiding in the dark, he was on high alert. He did not dare to make any rash moves. Just like that, he stood there for a long time. It was only when the 4 guardians of the Zoroastrianism appeared that he relaxed. He realized the powerhouse had most likely left. It's nothing. Tang Xian shook his head when he saw the 4 guardians looking at him in confusion. It was not that he wanted to hide the truth, but he did not know where to begin. After all, if he did not see it with his own eyes, it would be hard for him to believe there was such a powerhouse in the mundane realm. Did all of you just come back? Tang Xian asked when he saw the 4 guardians of the Zoroastrianism were travel-worn. It was as though they had just returned from afar. Yes. Guardian Hong Yin nodded. Then, she smiled wryly and said, "We went to look for the Super Saint weapon, the Dharma Rod. That's why we came back a little late." The Super Saint weapon, the Dharma Rod? Tang Xian's eyes lit up when he heard Hong Yun's words. The Dharma Rod has appeared? Where did all of you get this information from? The Super Saint weapon, the Dharma Rod, is in Hao Shuang's hands. The 4 guardians of the Zoroastrianism began to tell Tang Xian everything that had happened after he left the mundane realm. This included how the Zhuangzi Buddhism had invited Hao Shuang to the mundane realm. It also included how Duan Lingtian had defeated Hao Shuang with a single move. They told Tang Xian everything that had happened after that. It took Tang Xian a while to regain his senses. He was shocked. He defeated Hao Shuang with a single move? A complicated expression appeared on Tang Xian's face when he received confirmation from the 4 guardians of the Zoroastrianism. If it was not for the threat from that godlike powerhouse, Duan Lingtian, the strongest person at the 9th form of the Saint Celestial stage in the Tao Martial Saint Land, would be one of the pillars of the Zoroastrianism. The strength of the Zoroastrianism would be further enhanced with a guardian like Duan Lingtian. What a joke! Tang Xian muttered to himself. Tang Xian sighed when he thought about Duan Lingtian, who was nowhere to be found. He had no idea where Duan Lingtian was sent to. Lord Sect Leader? The 4 guardians of the Zoroastrianism were even more confused when they saw Tang Xian's reaction. Guardian Lingtian is the man the saint girl found in the lower province. The saint girl's daughter is his child, Tang Xian said in a deep voice. The 4 guardians of the Zoroastrianism were stunned when they heard Tang Xian's words. Guardian Lingtian was the man the saint girl of the Zoroastrianism found in the lower province? That you're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support. And don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.